this evening, March 20th, 2019. Before we proceed with the formal agenda, I'd like to have a moment of silence to acknowledge the passing of Mr. Tony O'Laughlin, who died late last week. He served 2 terms on the Board of Selectmen. I served with Tony. He was a good selectman and a fine fellow. So a moment of silence for Tony O'Laughlin. Thank you. We'll proceed with the agenda. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? There being none, we'll move to the review of the minutes for March 6th, 2019. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion is made to approve the minutes for March 6th, 2019. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion's carried. Second item on the agenda is a common victualer's license hearing for 155 Church Street. The Selectmen have received an application for a common victualer's license from Lucimer Gamide Silva, doing business as the Old Timer Restaurant and Bar, to operate a restaurant business on the premises located at 155 Church Street, Clinton. Michael is...
No, I think this is just, the board transferred the liquor license. These licenses can't get transferred, so we're just getting caught up on the paperwork. They brought in these forms last week and just asked if they could just formally vote to approve them for our record in the file that they were issued to the new entity.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, item 4 on the agenda is an entertainment license hearing for the same address, and I guess it's the same situation. So we'll entertain a motion to approve the common victualer's license. Well, they're both hearings, I'm sorry, so we've got to have a hearing. Okay. Is there anyone here to testify in favor of the common victualer's license? There isn't. Is there anyone to oppose it? There isn't. Any questions from the board? None. What's the pleasure of the board with regard to the common victualer's license?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the common vic license for 155 Church Street.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the common victualer's license for 155 Church Street. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next public hearing is for the same address, an entertainment license hearing. Is there anyone here to testify in favor? There isn't. Is there anyone to testify against? Nope. Any questions from the board? None. What's the pleasure of the board with regard to the entertainment license hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the entertainment license for Old Timer Restaurant.
Second.
Bar.
Motion's made and seconded for the entertainment license for the Old Timers. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. And we'll close those 2 public hearings. Next item on the agenda is the school department. As superintendent of schools and school committee. I hope they're here. Are they here? Superintendent of schools and school committee is requesting
You're up.
support from the Board of Selectmen for an application to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for funding to conduct a feasibility study on building conditions at Clinton Middle School. They are looking to submit the application from last year that was not selected for funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So sorry for being late. I had to run here straight from T-ball practice. So. So as you mentioned, we submitted a statement of interest for the middle school last year. We did make it to a site visit. They did come out and look at the building. However, we were not selected to be one of the projects funded this year. There's a limited number of projects that can fund each year. So We did receive feedback that they strongly encouraged us to apply again because they do feel like it's a building where there is a project and a need. So we'd like to apply again for the statement of interest. As I mentioned last year, it's not binding. I mean, if they invite us in, we still have to go through and accept that and all those types of things. So I don't know if you have any questions or if you're comfortable making kind of this motion.
Any questions from members of the board? No?
I don't have any.
Just a quick one. How many towns and cities like get selected for this? Just real quick, if you know offhand. I hate to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
I can't remember exactly the number this year. I want to say they visited like 14 cities, and I think only like 8 got funded, but I might be
Very,
slightly
very
off on this.
competitive, I'm
Yeah.
assuming, yeah, okay. All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. I know the process has changed a lot since I was involved in it, but do you know ahead of time what the reimbursement rate is? Or is that something that's project-specific and only announced after?
I think that's something we would probably find out once we got invited in and we're kind of getting into that phase. I don't know exactly what our reimbursement rate would be right now. I'd guess it would be pretty good. I think the previous projects were about 68 or 70.
71%?
Yeah. Yeah.
And these systems that you describe in this little memo here, actually, I guess this is the submission document. Those are the things that you have concerns about, roofs?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of concerns about that in that building, and so this is their specific language.
Oh, this is their language?
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically it's just saying that, these are different reasons that different areas of concern we have. If they invited us in, the next step would be to do a feasibility study. The feasibility study would then look at, what makes the most sense. Do we need to renovate that building, do an addition to that building? Would a new building be cheaper? Those types of things. And then if we wanted to pursue one of those options, we'd pursue those options and go through. So from getting invited in till actually having a completed project is like a 5 or 6 year process, so.
Okay. Well, just for the edification of the public, what's listed here is for replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility and replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and local requirements. So it's a pretty wide-ranging sort of criteria that they're looking at.
Right, they'll look at all of those things.
They'll look at the whole building.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Well, what's the pleasure of the board with regard to this request?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the board support and endorse the process that the superintendent's laid out for us and authorize the signature on the state document.
A second.
Motion's made and seconded to support the application to the Massachusetts School Building Authority and to authorize the town administrator to sign the application document. It's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Thank you very much, Dr. Meyer.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Can I add one thing while I have you here, if it's okay? I don't know if you know that because it's kind of building related as well. I do know that we've had the feasibility study has kind of come back from the fire station. We've begun having some discussions on that at the school committee. I think there's still some other aspects that we need to work out on that in terms of really looking at how we could make that more of like the kind of the town makerspace school shared resource that we've kind of envisioned for that and what those logistics would look like. So I think we're continuing to look in that process, and I think that that's something that we would want to come back at a later date and kind of brief the selectmen on kind of, what the results of that study were, what we think the feasibility of, what the economic impact would be, and what that project might look like. So I think there's really kind of two things we have going on right now. We've got the middle school, which we want to get moving on, but we also have the fire station project going at the same time. Okay?
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just a quick question. Do you see those timelines lining up at all, so it could be one comprehensive, at least funding mechanism, or?
Possibly. The only thing I would say is that the MSBA most likely would not do any type of reimbursement
Okay.
for that project. So they would be kind of a different, it would have to be sort of like a different funding source.
Okay.
But could it all be presented as the same type of debt exclusion or something?
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know the logistics of it. Any other?
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Dr. Meyer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and efforts. Next item, we're going to begin some fiscal year 2020, isn't it?
Yes.
It's 2018 here on my sheet. I almost said it. Fiscal year 20, I'm too sharp for that, though. Fiscal year 2020 budget hearings, and the first one is the Bigelow Public Library. So we will invite the director of the library and two library commissioners.
So you have your budget, you
Yep.
have
Yeah.
the I Love Libraries sort of breakdown of what your library's worth, what the town gets for their money.
Yeah.
And this is just copies of Valentine's, because February was I Love Libraries Month. and
Nice.
look
Oh,
and see what
beautiful.
people say, good things about the library.
Thank you much.
So you all have the budget. It's not overly aggressive, I don't think. But there's going to be one thing that sticks out for you is the head of adult services, which is not currently a position. In October, we had a library assistant leave. We do not currently have a head of adult services, and we have a head of youth services. But in the interest of parity and the fact that the head of adult services will be doing a lot of things. It's a position that the Personnel Board has approved of and the trustees have approved of. We just need it funded at the same level, well, not quite the same level, but the same grade as the head of youth services. And it is a question of, I am currently sort of doing two roles, the head of adult services and the director. And I'm not doing, I'm doing them adequately, but I would like to be better at both, and I just don't have the time. So rather than hire a library assistant and then later say, oh, we need this position, head of adult services, we thought we'd take this opportunity to sort of replace the position. Right now, it's being funded by, it's got a temp. We thought we would take this opportunity to say, hey, let's get this position now, and bring the library to where it really could be. So that is probably the one thing that you guys are looking at. Other than that, everything is pretty low-key. I think so. And do you have any questions before Gloria speaks? No,
I have a
great.
question.
You
I
have a
did-
question?
No, I know.
Okay, no questions? Gloria?
Hello, everybody. I'd like to follow up on what Marie just said about the head of adult services. And I'd also, on behalf of the trustees, like to do, as I have done in the last several years, bring you up to date with the much longer-term vision and plan for the library, namely the applying for the state construction grants, the two-phase project that starts with the planning and design phase, and then at a later date with an actual construction and renovation phase. These are very highly competitive. In the last 12 months, the Board of Trustees has done a lot of research. We have had presentations made to us by two local libraries who've gone through the process, but the Bolton Library, who did go through the process, was successful with the whole construction phase and accepted the money. We've also had Boylston that went through the process and decided not to accept the money when it was awarded. However, what we have learned, Marie has consulted with her colleagues, her librarian colleagues, the trustees, in consultation with the other libraries that have gone through this process, in order to present an application for phase one, the design and planning phase, it is a huge amount of work that falls on the library director. There's a huge amount of documentation, there's evaluating all the needs assessment, and as you know, for the last N years, the library has done 5-year plans with surveys, meetings with the public, and they're all saying to move forward with renovating the library. In order for the town to present the best application it can, we need Marie to do the work that has to go into that application. So part of the thinking of bringing in the head of adult services at this point, when the opportunity arose, and it was a more economical way of doing it than, as Marie says, bringing in an assistant and then looking for somebody, we feel that it is both what we would call visionary prudence, financially, in terms of financial planning, prudent. I'd also like to share, as I have done in the past with the Board of Selectmen, that as soon as that first phase, the design and planning phase, opens, we wish to be ready to go, and there is always some factor of a matching grant, as we know, with state money. For the last 5 years, the trustees have been building a financial plan, so as soon as we apply for that grant, we have already got what we believe are sufficient matching funds that we will not be coming to the town to ask for matching funds for the planning and design phase. So in other words, boom, as soon as it opens up, we'd be hot to trot. The other key part about applying for these grants is they do not come up very often. It's not like if you don't go for it, you've got another time next year. I think the last, I may be wrong on this, but the last planning and design phase is at least 5 to 7 years ago for the window of opportunity to apply.
2013.
2013? Okay, 5 years. So all of the long-term planning and the financial planning is what has played into this position, as well as the parity between the upstairs and the downstairs collections, and I just wanted to share that with the board. So we are looking at a much bigger picture at this point that we believe will benefit the town in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you.
She's just here for support.
Karen's here for support.
She's here to nudge
Okay.
me to stop talking so much.
Any questions from members of the board? Okay, well, I see that your budget request is basically the same as last year, with $3,000 or $4,000 more. And it's very nicely put together and very readable. And you did give us this little document, I Love Libraries, and I thought I would share that with the, well, at least the bottom line, with the people that are here and the people watching. And basically, what this does is it provides a estimated cost for money that the taxpayers have saved by using the library, as opposed to going and buying a book or renting a movie or buying a movie. For example, adult books borrowed saves the taxpayers approximately $188,462. So it's organized on that line. And the bottom line is the value to the taxpayers in terms of borrowed books, movies, other programs, etc., is $896,640.95.
Good
So,
deal.
huh?
A good deal.
It's a good deal. So I just wanted the taxpayers to know, one, that you went to the trouble of doing that, and I wanted to recommend it to them in their, considerations of the Bigelow
There is
Library.
also the statistic, I'm going to misquote it, but the attendance at libraries is greater than attendance at all sports events, and is it cultural events too? I'm not sure.
Basically, the data is from 2014, but more people went to Massachusetts libraries than went to Disney World.
Ah,
So
okay.
maybe we should invite them here.
Mhm. If we could charge them what they charge at Disney World, we wouldn't have
That's
to have
right,
this
then.
budget hearing.
Be awesome.
Okay, nothing else? Nothing else from the board? Very good, thank you very much. And
Thank
we'll
you.
move on
Thank you.
to our next budget, which is the treasurer collector.
Mr. Kittredge, I'm Joe. How are you? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is easier to understand.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Mr. Kittredge, the floor is yours.
What's that?
All set, yeah.
So, just going over my budget and overall, I've been on the other side, people always complain, but I just want to report that I'm adequately staffed and we're adequately funded. There's no major changes in here. Salary, work with the debt numbers that have changed a little bit. We've got some short-term borrowing in there, 25,000 that we've allocated in the last few years. The only borrowing I anticipate this year is a small ban on some projects that have been authorized in the last couple of years. We certainly have enough money in there to pay the short-term interest rate. Health insurance is driven by enrollment and the rates we're presented with. We've just been given the new rates, which are higher again. And based on the current enrollment, seniors and active members, these are my numbers. And the Medicare tax is based on actual for the calendar year 2018. So overall, it's down 800,000, but a lot of it's debt and a lot of it's tied to, school projects and debt exclusion type things.
Any questions from members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question, John. What was the percentage of increase in cost for healthcare?
I think it was before, we have 3 plans, as you know. For a
Yep.
while, Fallon was holding the line at 0 and the other 2 were going up. Now Fallon's up 9.5% and the other 2 are up 5.5%. They wanted a substantially higher increase. We're a member of the Minuteman Consortium, so, we were able to negotiate down. There's not a lot of options for us, but it's somewhat tolerable, I guess, for this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Can you go into just a little bit more detail? I'm just curious about the fact that your total budget is $895,000 less this year than last year. Is that the result of some debts being paid off?
Right. Yeah, I think the high school, came off, which was probably 95% of that.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, debt exclusion, the money that we raise is going to offset that, so it's not, a dollar for dollar reduction to the budget, but overall budget, but
Okay.
it's a reduction to my budget.
So it was 825, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I said
825.
895, but it was 825. Okay, so it's mostly as a result of debts being
Yeah,
retired.
and all those numbers are solid.
Okay. No other questions?
Just, I wish you could have some input on all the other departments and have them come in the same
Yeah,
way.
I know. We can hope.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
thank you
Thanks,
very
John.
much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming in.
And we have Ms. Goodsell here, I see, from the Council on Aging. I am going to come over and have lunch with you on a Wednesday. I just, that email sort of slipped through my fingers.
You won't be sorry. It's really good.
All right.
Today they had meatloaf, and it's homemade meatloaf with peeled mashed potatoes, everything made fresh. Fresh vegetables, everything. So yeah,
Well,
you'll enjoy it.
I'll be answering the email. For people's edification, Ms. Goodsell recently sent out an email inviting some of us. There's a lunch every Wednesday afternoon.
We have a center meal that we cook homemade at the center every Wednesday, And what we decided to do is to invite anybody in the town employees, to come and spend time with the seniors and have lunch on us.
Yeah.
So that way you get to sit with the seniors, hear what their concerns are, and they get to talk with you.
Well, I'll be answering you shortly, because
Good.
I will be
I'm
over to
glad.
see you. But now to more serious things, the
Yes, the budget.
Council on Aging budget.
So the budget here is a little bit higher than last year. We made some changes. We're actually being proactive going forward, and we do feel that our most valuable asset is our seniors and our community. So we're looking at changing one of the positions' titles and job description from the Administrative Assistant Transportation Coordinator to the Assistant Director Volunteer Coordinator. We have over 70-plus volunteers at the center now, and we're actually looking at doubling that this year. We're thinking that, you know, we have receptionists right now that are all volunteers, Meals on Wheels drivers, our kitchen help is volunteers, and our senior population is now the baby boomers who are younger seniors who want things to do and to be active and, you know, valuable to the community. So we feel that by changing the structure a little bit, we're going to be utilizing these people in our community in ways where we don't have to use money for that. One of the things is here we have a dispatcher. So the dispatcher in this budget is actually at 25 hours. If it ends up being 19, that's okay, because we're going to utilize tax work-off program volunteers. Well, they're really tax work-off program participants to make up the other hours in that position. And like I said, right now we have let me get into another thing with you. We do the WRTA van transportation.
Yes.
We have certain places we go, certain days, certain times, kind of thing. So let's say Mike's doctor is in Leominster and he doesn't have a ride, he lives in senior housing and needs to get to his doctor. I can only take you there on Monday. So let's say your doctor has Mondays off. What are you doing then? So same thing with Worcester. We go Wednesdays and Fridays. So if you have a doctor's appointment at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, I can get you there. I can't get you home. The vans are off the road. So what we're looking at doing with this new volunteer coordinator position is starting a volunteer driver program. It's been very successful in other towns, and we're looking to have that here as well. So that's one of the things we're looking to add. We're also looking at adding friendly visitors in Clinton, we have 3,500 seniors. Out of the 3,500 seniors, 1,078 over the age of 60 live alone. So we're looking at doing a friendly visitor program where some of these seniors, you know, not everybody's lonely, but those who are would have the opportunity to have somebody stop by and visit them once a week. Also friendly phone calls just as a wellness check to call and say, hey, you know, Pat, how you doing? Are you okay this week? Everything good? You need anything? Things like that. So we're looking at using the volunteers in many different ways. And then also the meal site manager right now is 19 hours. I'd like to put that to 25. We've been working with MOC, Montezut Opportunity Council. They're the ones that bring in the meals, the hot meals Monday through Friday. They would like us to start doing some hot breakfasts. So they would provide the food and all of that. We would just be, you know, the ones who put it together and serve it. So we're looking at doing that as well and having some hot breakfast at the facility, at the center as well. I know there's probably 100 things I'm forgetting to tell you. 3 of you I know get the newsletter and the rest of you are on Facebook, so I'm assuming you are up to date with some of the things that we're doing up there. There's a lot of different programs, a lot of different things coming up. You know, we hope we have something for everyone. I just checked our statistics in the computer today. We already have, when seniors come in, not all, but when seniors come in, they swipe in and check into what program they're attending. Today we had 3 pages of programs they could go to today. But when they swipe in, it counts in the computer. We already have more swipes as of today than we had of all last year. And we still have the rest of March, April, May, and June to go through. So it's definitely being utilized. And we're working with, like I said, the facilities director and, you know, maybe putting a couple more parking spots because we seem to run out quickly up there. And that's, do you guys have any questions? for me.
Any questions? Yes?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a compliment, and I want to say thank you to you and to all the workers up there. I was doing my bank at a video bank, and I ran into one of your flyers down there, and it talks
Right.
about our seniors and if they would like to get into transportation, up there in health and education. But I was doing my bank, and I just thought it
Saw
was
that.
awesome
That's a
to
flyer
see
we
that,
put out.
and I thought it was very nice, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Job well done.
That's a flyer that we put out. It's preventing loneliness and social isolation. And it tells some of the things that we do in town, whether it's coming to the senior center, friendly visitors, or using our transportation to go visit your friend. So it talks about that. But when you said a video bank, also another volunteer. Jill D'Souza is at the bank, and she volunteers for our Veterans Breakfast.
Nice.
Jolisa Chenard is at the other bank, Hometown Bank. She volunteers for our Veterans Breakfast, and so does Holly Sargent. So the three of them are there, doing the Veterans Breakfast. So we have a lot of volunteers in the community that are helping us out, and we have a lot of seniors who are volunteers helping us out. So,
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions?
Just, yeah, real quick, I mean, I think the volunteer driver program is great, and you're getting ahead of a lot of things, and I think that's really good, being proactive. Obviously, a lot of seniors that use it, and it's being well utilized, so.
There's a need.
You'd be commended. I know
definitely
you run a tight ship down there, and you got a bunch of good workers and volunteers, so it's all about the people that bring it together, so I just wanted to commend you as well.
thank you.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else? I just thought I would give you an opportunity to talk about, you're going to be reducing the hours for the outreach coordinator.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we, when we were working the numbers, the needs have gone down quite a bit as far as outreach, only because we have agencies that are available who specialize in those things. We used to do home visits where we would go to the home, we go to your mother's house, we see what needs that she has, what we can do. Where now we have Montechusett Opportunity Council. They're our ASAP, our Agency on Aging in this area. So we don't do the home visit because we can't really offer you anything. We can, be the feel-good person, but Montechusett Opportunity Council will go into your home and say, okay, we're gonna set you up with a home care, a housekeeper, we're gonna set you up with a personal care attendant, we're gonna set you up with Meals on Wheels, things like that. Health insurance, all of that. We have, Fallon comes once a month, Senior Whole Health comes, we, Navicare, we have all those agencies come and meet with our clients, so we don't have to do that with them anymore. Also, we have Shine, which is the senior health insurance needs for elderly, and he comes twice a month, and he will sit down, go over your Medicare with you, go over what your, what else you need, talk about all of that. So we do have a lot of agencies that specialize in certain things that we were kind of covering before that we don't really need to anymore. So that's part of it. Also, when you come to the center, you'll see we have a resource room.
Mhm.
The resource room is set up, it has 4 computers for public use. There's a printer, and there's all brochures, pamphlets, information. So part of our volunteer piece is going to be having volunteers there who will be able to help you. Let's say you want to do housing. The housing applications are going to be online going forward. They have a new program through the state called CHAMP. So you'll be able to, on our town webpage, you can actually go onto the new webpage, go into Outreach Services, click on Housing App. It'll take you to that link, and you can fill out the housing app right then and there. So there's a lot of things with technical that are coming up that are going to be much easier for our seniors.
And you do have, I happen to know, classes there on technology, so
We
they
do,
can...
Tech Time.
Yeah, so they
Yep,
could learn how
once a
to...
month. And it's not just, if your phone, if you have a problem with your phone, you don't know how to turn it up, or you want to delete something, or your iPad, your laptop, you bring whatever you have in.
What time do you open tomorrow?
8:30. 8:30. Tomorrow we have durable medical equipment, growing places, and forget what else. Today we had the VNA doing stroke awareness. We had Neshoba Nursing doing combating loneliness. We had AARP was doing taxes on upstairs. We had Shine in the library. So like I said, every day it's just, I come in first thing and I click the screen to see what programs are going on that day. So Monday's bingo pizza party, so if you're around. You know, there's a lot of things going on. I mean, everything from, you know, your yoga to your Tai Chi, your strength and balance, your, you know, Mission Slim Possible, our weight loss group, to the book club was meeting this afternoon. We hope to have something for everyone. So,
Awesome.
and if we don't have it, you know, we ask you to come start it. You know, be our program leader and do it. You know, I'm sure if you like doing it, somebody else will like it as well. So,
Okay,
Awesome.
all
well,
set?
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Coming in.
guys.
We got next, Chief Levager with the Clinton Police. What's that? Oh, Fire Department?
The police chief is going to stay for the street maintenance discussions.
Okay, all right, I'm just going by what, so, Chief Lutz.
So I spoke to the Finance Committee last night, and I spoke to Michael afterwards. I got a couple of amendments that I'll explain as we go along.
Thanks, Chief.
And then inside each of the packets, there's just
Thank you,
some
Chief.
of the straightforward stuff is just on a spreadsheet, just for clarification.
Thank you, Chief.
Mike, thank you.
So basically, we'll just kind of a quick review, right straight down the road. Most of the chief's salary, the deputy salary, the acting captain's salary, the captain's salaries, the firefighter salaries, the call firefighter salaries, all that are pretty straightforward. One of the things that I didn't know about is I don't know about the personnel board, how the raises go. So if you're kind of curious to why the fire alarm electrician went up, I just basically put him in for what the firefighters went in for. Right or wrong, that's what I did. That's my logic behind that. I don't know whether the personnel board's gonna give him a raise or not, but I put him in for one. Before I forget it, one of the things that he did mention to me, I've got it written down here, is he talked to me in brief the other day about, I believe all the street lamps were gonna be going over to LEDs. And he had mentioned that once that project gets completed, that he would be able to take over the maintenance of the street lamps. He told me to throw that out there, I just threw it out there. That was one of the things he said to me, and I'm not sure how that works, I'm just relaying the message from him that he'd be willing to take the street lamps over. So, down to him. So one of the big things, obviously, that's under discussion is overtime. In my meetings with Diane, traditionally, the fire department runs approximately, for the last 5 years, about $200,000 a year. This year, it's gonna go way beyond that. One of the reasons that it's gonna go way beyond that is sitting here right now, I'm down 7 firefighters. I'm down 2 vacancies. I'm down 1 firefighter that just had emergency surgery the other day and is gonna be down for, hopefully not longer than a couple of months. And then I have 4 firefighters that are out injured on duty. One of those firefighters is in the process of being retired. So I also just recently hired 3 firefighters. So I hired 3, knowing that being proactive versus reactive, I have 1 firefighter that's gonna retire, so I hired these 3. They're not on the payroll, they're not started, we're not over the numbers. The downside to that, and I was explaining it to Michael, what the downside is that I hire them, so I'm in the process of physicals right now, then the physical agilities test, abilities test, get that out of the way. Then I have to notify the fire academy to get them into the academy. So now, the option is Stowe Fire Academy and Springfield Academy. If they go to Stowe, sitting here right now, they may get in this year, as in December. They may not. So they don't do me any good mathematically for manning firefighter positions or anything. So they're not gonna be counted until next year. One of the things I'm starting to look at, I haven't really gotten into it, I met with the fire marshal the other day, and he made mention to me that there's a possibility that in the Springfield Academy that they can get in earlier. Now, how much earlier, I don't know, I'm just starting to look into that. So if that's the case, it might be better financially for us to take and put the firefighters out there, lodge them out there. If I can get them done 3 or 4 months sooner, then they're gonna count as manning, and then that's gonna kinda tone the overtime back a little bit. So right now, I have 2 shifts that are 5 and 5, and 2 shifts that are 4 and 4. So those 2 shifts that are 4 and 4, every single time that shift is on, there's overtime. There's just no way around it, because the staffing has to be 24 hours a day. And that's not including anything, no vacation, personal, nothing. Just every day, I gotta cover that gap. You know, I spoke to Mr. Tumalo about that we've got to realistically come up with a true number. Hopefully, next year, this time next year, we're gonna be back to 25 firefighters, and then we'll have to relook at the numbers again. But over time, that's the reality of it. So fire longevity, that's pretty straightforward. The holiday pay is straightforward. The sick time buyback, that's one of the things that I amended in it. What ended up happening is, I did the firefighter's sick time buyback, but the one firefighter that I'm gonna retire, he gets 25% of his leftover sick leave buyout at retirement. So in the bottom section, I had it in the bottom there, you know, included in the above. However, I didn't include it. So I put that in, so that's why that number of fire sick time buyback went from 26 to 36. And that's the reason for that. Just an error there. Then when you get down to fire incentive pay, that's another amendment. I amended that. That actually went just down just a little bit. The reason for that is the one firefighter that's retiring now, we remove his incentive pay out, but yet I have 2 firefighters that are still going to school, so theirs goes up a little. So that just kind of shifted that, offset that just slightly. So that's why that got amended to that $12,720. Then when you get down to uniform allowance, that's pretty straightforward. The uniform expense is considerable jump. And the reason for the considerable jump is if I hire 3 firefighters, okay, and then I turn around and we maintain, every year we try to replace 4 sets of gear, so it takes so many years to stay everybody gets new gear, safe gear. That would be in 1 year, I would have to put out 7 sets of firefighters' gear at $3,500 per set. So that brings you up to $24,500, then plus the regular maintenance of clothing. Somebody tears their gear, we send it out, we gotta get it repaired. So that's the reason why you see such a steep jump, because just those 3 sets of gear is a considerable amount of money. Let's see. Apparatus repair, that's a subject of discussion. So basically, when I put my last budget in, they went up to the $29,650. And what I was gonna try to do is, I was gonna try to, once a year, send my 3 engines and my ladder to a specialty vehicle, to Greenwood, top to bottom service. So my goal was to take my engine 2, my oldest engine, get it in really good shape, because my engine 3 has a catastrophic oil leak. So oil goes in the top, goes out on the bottom, goes onto my floor. This is daily, every day. So I'm gonna try to fix that. So what ends up happening is, every time I turn around, something else breaks. So I have, to this day, sitting here right now, we're 9 months deep in the budget, oil leak's still leaking. I can't even get to it. My frontline pieces of 2015 down there, I had to wait almost 2 months for parts. It just sat there idle, couldn't do nothing for us. So I've been kind of chasing my tail. So basically, I kind of jumped that considerable, because Michael's got I had to put in for a transfer. I gave him that last night to kind of give you a heads up. So that's the reason. The maintenance is crazy. I'm not going to say every piece of apparatus, but pretty close to it. I put leaf springs in. The roads are what they are. Not to mention, one of my engines is carrying 1,000 gallons of water. So we already know that's over 4 ton. But it doesn't take too much if you hit a good pothole to break something. So I've spent a lot of money on maintenance, and I'm still trying. I'm still trying to get to the oil leak. However, I haven't been able to. The other thing when we talk about the apparatus repair is we don't have a town mechanic. So any of the small things that I would send over to the town mechanic for, we don't have a town mechanic. So I have to, every single thing, 100% of the fire department work is subbed out now. So that's obviously changed my budget considerably. So anything that goes out for fuel filters, oil filters, all the stuff that would be done over there at the DPW are no longer done. We have to pay for all that. And just building repair and maintenance, building's aging. In one of my notes, you know, Russ and we talked extensively. The rooftop units are getting extremely costly to repair. They're getting old, they're getting aged. Every time I have somebody come in, it seems like it's a $1,000 bill just to get the heating unit up and running. So I had to kind of look at putting that up. Pretty much from there down, pretty straightforward all the way down. Fire hose, I mean, 2 years ago, they took it out. Last year, I tried to put it in. The hose is starting to, you know, get older. We're gonna need to start to repair some. I put $5,000 in, just thinking, you know, we can start to get some hose, because eventually we're gonna need to repair it. And then the bottom one, fire equipment, basically, the reason for the $2,500 increase on the very bottom line was just the tech rescue team. You know, we buy their equipment and then we pay them $250, you know, for the year. Situation there is, I'm sorry, $500. I'm sorry, $500 a year for $2,500 for the 5 guys. And what we do is, the reason I put that up is so that they have some money out of that to buy equipment. It's getting more and more. It seems to be, it's constant. They're getting called out. They've been called out quite a bit. They train quite a bit. The Mass Fire Academy is looking, I believe, it's down in Bridgewater State Hospital. They're gonna take over a parcel of property there, and they're gonna set up a special spot for these people to train in structural collapse and stuff, dedicated to that. Not only that, but you know, one of the things that they're gonna dedicate to. And then on the bottom, in one of your spreadsheets, like I told you, I got the firefighter that's retiring, and just basically, there's no real line item for that. So I put in what his, you know, to buy back his vacation and his time, what he's entitled to. Now, basically, if you want to jump over to capital, well, unless you've got questions first, and then we can go to capital.
Are there any questions on this portion of the budget? I have 2 questions.
Sure.
This engine that is leaking the oil that you haven't
Yep.
had fixed, is that because you don't have the money?
No, it's because I can't get to it. Because in order to protect the citizens of Clinton for fire apparatus, I have to have a fire apparatus to replace it for the safety of the people, or else they call for a fire apparatus, they're gonna get it from another community. So I have not been able to take that out of service for longer than a week. So I have to have the other 2 engines run and operate long enough for me to take that out, to send it out, to get the top of the engine taken off to repair. The leak is, you're more than welcome to come down.
I'm not doubting it.
It's bad, I mean, but it's not from a lack of effort, it's just I can't get there. I can't have my 2 engines run physically long enough to get that repaired. I'm trying, I
So-
try diligently.
So are you saying that you have 3 engines?
3
One
engines.
with a leak, 2 without?
2
The
without.
2 without the leaks are not reliable enough to depend upon?
No, every time I get ready to take that engine 3 out to fix oil leak, one of them would break down.
I see, okay.
So it just kept kind of going and going and going.
I see, okay, all right. Well, that was my question, thank you. And the other question was, what exactly does the tech rescue team do?
Basically, they'll get called out to, they had an incident out west of here. Car went down a real steep embankment. So they're all set up for steep inclines, ledges. If somebody went into, say, a vat, you know, like a silo or something, they're set up to do silo rescues. They're set up to do with the tripods to go over a well, to go in a well.
Okay, all right,
They're set up for the other thing that they're really set up for is structural collapse. That's one of the biggest things they set up for structural collapse.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And we'll be happy to hear the capital request.
So the capital, I put in, I did just a little bit of homework in reference to the engines and stuff, and it's about $550,000 for a custom engine. So if you turn around, and the reason I put in is obviously the battle that I'm up against right now, but is if we get it approved, say we get it approved, and we get it approved in June. We get it approved in June, and then we turn around and we spec the truck, we get the truck set up for bid, and just being, you know, optimistic, just say it goes out to be built in September. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 300+ days turnaround time to get the piece in your door. Then they have to come and teach you how to operate all their new equipment. Then you got to put your equipment and your water on it and get it into service. So the reason I'm looking at that is could be as many as 18 months away before you even see this piece of equipment. However, you got to buy it up front, but the situation is it takes time to get an engine in service. So that's for 2020.
Now, Chief,
Yeah.
about the fire engine, is this a pumper?
This is a pumper, yeah.
A pumper,
Yeah, it's a
okay.
pumper, yeah.
Now, I'm just wondering, thinking back 20 years ago when I served on a committee for a pumper, there was the option of buying a stock pumper as opposed to going through
There is an
a-
option.
What is the
However,
problem with that?
the problem with that is now you have different apparatus. So now if you set your pumpers up the same, so if you got engine 2, engine 3, and engine 4, and they're all set up the same, you spec them out the same, that in the cover of darkness, when you go around that truck, you know exactly where your equipment is, right on the spot. You don't have to guess, well, wait a minute, this is engine 3, it's in a different spot. This is engine 4, it's in a different spot. It's all the same. So what we would try to do is we would try to spec a truck out to mirror image our 2 engines down there that we're gonna keep. That's the biggest benefit of it,
Okay,
you know?
all right.
Any other questions? So then just kind of going into 2021. We're still in the process, Michael's in the process, the deputy and myself are in the process of the paramedic study. But again, it takes time as far as you got to look at your ambulance, turning your ambulances over every 7 to 8 years. So I was looking at that fiscal year knowing full well that even it's a shorter turnaround time, probably more like 9 months to purchase an ambulance and spec an ambulance out. But in the same token, it's still time. So even looking, a couple of years down the road and kind of looking forward to it, if the town opts to go to a paramedic-based EMS service here, we need to have an ambulance that's kind of readily available to fall into that place. So this study's going to be done. We're going to sort this all out, and at least we've put in, looking down the road, the opportunity to have an ambulance that's set up for paramedics.
And as you're talking here about
$300,000.
2021. No, but you're talking about 2021,
2021, yeah.
2 years out.
Yeah, just like I said, just kind of looking down the road,
Right.
kind of giving some ideas. And then the chief's car, looking at replacing the chief's car. The pickup truck, the bed, it was, when the town bought it, it was a used pickup. The bed is basically rotted right off of it. I'm trying to find out if if there's no damage to the frame, if the frame's not rotted, if it's worth it to put a bed on it. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of looking at that. But at least I put in for a couple of years down the road to the option of that. Some of the things with the chief's car is the situation with all the cancer stuff that goes on in the fire service and everything. All the newer stuff, they have kind of areas where your gear goes, kind of keeps the contaminants there. You wash your gear, absolutely, but your still gear retains certain stuff and off gases. So you have a better area to do it. Obviously, in this last fiscal year, we really did a really heavy upgrade in computers, trying to get with the times, get with technology. We've done that really aggressively, and it's going very well. One of the things that we have the ability to do is Mr. Mapper, where Mr. Mapper is all updated. We're trying to work out, like you guys got all the tablets, we can go in and we can look at a structure and see what's in that structure in real time. The other thing we can do is we have options to, in one of our programs, when you do inspections, you can take pictures. I went out and I bought good stuff, so you could take pictures and you could pre-plan some of these big structures in town. So that's just one of the options. And then the last one, which is 2022, which is a few years away. So basically, as the fire service is kind of changing into the jack of all trades, like I said, we talked about, the tech rescue team. People are wanting you to do everything. Well, now that's an issue because what's happening is, like I was alluding to earlier, you're breaking your springs. We're carrying everything. We got stuff that's everything. We're carrying everything in these engines. So what I'm looking down the road a few years is if this is going to be the trend and we're going to be doing everything, we should probably try to lighten our engines up and put a rescue truck. Now that number is, like a rescue truck that doesn't make any difference whether you can walk in or not. It's the same price. However, after I put these numbers in, a couple of my firefighters did some training and they saw smaller rescues, that basically carry the equipment, however, the smaller versions. So I don't have any real pricing. That was just a number that I put out that I got from one of the dealers of what a rescue costs. So that is considerably subject to, I know it's 3 years away, but still just an explanation of what it is. Pretty much what I got.
Okay. Any questions or comments from members of the board?
I have no questions.
So now, Michael, just a quick question, an easy one. I gave you those forms last night. Do they have them? So do we, as far as the transfers?
Next.
Right, that's something that we would have to put on the agenda
Okay.
for their next meeting.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
something we have to notice.
No, that's fine. No, that's perfectly fine. I just want to make sure, because if they want to ask questions about it, I think I already answered them. But
Yeah, the chief will be looking for some apparatus, repair money, and overtime money to get through the end of the year. It's a considerable number, so I'll work with the town accountant to see what we have for current funding, and then bring forward to the next meeting that transfer, because the amount that's needed right now probably exceeds the amount the finance committee has in their line item, so we gotta find some other sources at this point, so.
And just, as Michael and I talked last night, I have like all the records as far as each apparatus and what I paid for repairs in that apparatus. So if somebody wants, has a question about that, you're more than welcome. I can give everybody copies of everything we did and what we paid for up to date, Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Next, we have the police chief.
Welcome, Chief.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
Fiscal budget, the salaries, as you know, they are what they are. The level service salary calls for the same amount of men, same amount of dispatchers. There's a 2.25% raise that was negotiated. That's the last year of a three-year contract that expires June 30th of 2020. And that 2.25% raise ripples right through the whole budget. It goes into their holiday pay, sick day buyback, and so on. The other increases, a little bit of an increase in the educational incentive for the officers that do not get the Quinn bill. There's a new clause in the contract that gives the officers educational incentive for obtaining their bachelor's degree, and the benefit went up by $1,000 this year, And several officers are going to school now and getting their degrees, and that's why you have an increase there. The police new equipment, this year we're asking for 2 police cruisers. We've always gotten a new cruiser every 8 months, so 1 year we'd get 1 cruiser, and then the next year 2 cruisers. We've been off that rotation now for 3 years. We've been getting 1 cruiser for each year. And level service, asking for 10 portable radios. We've gotten 10 this past year, 10 this year, and then 10 next year, and all the portable radios will be new. And then every year we replace 3 PCs. We have about 16 of them over there in the building, and we try to replace 3 a year, and that way every 5 years they're new. The increase in the sick day buyback, we're going to have a couple of retirements, and that's why we have a increase in the sick day buyback. The big issue here on this budget, as you know, you probably realize, is the overtime. And this past year, I think they gave us $63,000 in overtime, and the average for the past 8 years has been roughly $180,000. And when you put the $63,000 in there, very unrealistic. We have certain things that we have to do, and I don't have a minimum staffing clause, but I don't let the staffing go below 3 officers. So we've had some sicknesses and illnesses, and a couple of injuries on duty, and so we've had officers out. So that increases why we have the overtime. I had to pull the officer that we had in HIDA, which is the Drug Task Force in Worcester, to come back here and do local investigations because of the opiate epidemic. We wanted to have him focus right here in Clinton instead of, Worcester County is what he was doing. And he was being paid overtime through the federal government, which was in the $20,000 range. Now he's, when he does works overtime, it's out of our budget. A lot of training required. People are expecting a lot more from the police department. They're expecting a school resource officer. So we have a school resource officer up at the schools now, and that takes a person off of the patrol shift. So I still keep that 3 minimum manning, even though we do have an officer up at the school. He's up there doing his thing up there. We've a lot of what the overtime is caused by training, the firearms training, where they used to the officers by contract used to give us 12 hours or 16 hours or something like that. That's no longer in the contract. So now we pay them when they do their firearms training. We have active shooter training in case there's an active shooter response. We have to respond. Very unlikely event, probably never going to happen, but we have to train. People expected to be trained to respond to those incidents. And that involves not only the officers, but the dispatchers, involves the fire department, involves the hospital when we do that training. And so we have that expense. This year, we have the One Mind campaign to recognize mental illness, and we're handling that different. This is what's expected now. They don't expect you to be locking people up with mental illness, and we deal with a lot of the people we deal with their mental illness. And what the One Mind campaign does, every officers get trained and recognizes certain mental illnesses and how to handle the people. They expect you to have a critical incident team to come out and get the person to the proper place instead of putting them in a jail cell. So that training going to be 16 hours for each officer on the department, and 25% of the officers have to be trained in the critical incident team, and that will be 40 hours for those officers. With the opiate crisis, we just don't give them Narcan anymore. It takes a lot of time. We have to, informally now, we go back to the people, we try and get them into recovery, we try and push them into the right direction, we go to the house and talk to the person, and we've had some great success. We have some success stories. Officer Frisch has done that, but we're going to try and formalize the program. So if someone from Clinton overdoses up in Fitchburg, Fitchburg notifies Clinton, and we get to the person and try to get them that way. And other ways that when we get involved with them, we see they have a problem, we're going to try and get to them. So it takes up a lot of time, and we're going to try to train it. I'm going to try and train 6 people to be recovery coaches. Like I said, right now, we have officers do it informally. We have ties with some of the rehab places, and we get the people in the homes, drive them there. We go visit them there and try to push them in the right direction and help them along. So the job is really changing, and that's why $180,000 is what we're going to spend this year, and I don't see it becoming any less next year. Any questions? I mean, everything else is, pretty much what it has been in the past. The expenses are the same. Cleaning services.
Any questions from members of the board? There being none, thank you very much, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for coming
Chief.
in, Chief.
And last but not least, for budget hearings, the Department of Public Works, Mr. McGowan.
Gentlemen. All right, so I think you guys have the 2020 budget in front of you. One thing that should be noted is this is our last year of our union contract, so I have not included any union contract raises in this. So anything that's negotiated would be on top of what I have in here. I've also not included raises for myself or my clerk. I know that usually Michael and you guys will figure that out as the process goes along. So those are not included in the budget, no raises. There are step increases, which are, the more junior members of the union do get step increases every year, and that is factored into the budget. I guess generally speaking, the top portion of the first page on the Department of Public Works budget is just wages and union longevity pay and clothing, till you get down to past the fuel tank, you get down to DPW miscellaneous expenses. If you look at the level funded budget, it's basically the same as it was last year, which would be problematic. If you see, there's a pretty big jump in the level service budget. And what that is for is we are in the first year right now of the new stormwater regulations. In the first year, we were in pretty good shape. We knew about what was coming, so we were a little bit ahead of the game. So this year we kind of got to pass on it, but come next fiscal year, we have to start monitoring and testing all of our outfalls and making repairs to the system. Each year, it's going to get worse. It's going to get more expensive. We're going to be required in the future, maybe 5 years from now, to start yearly doing major improvements to all the town properties, which includes new stormwater basins, oil water separators. Next year, the biggest item we have is we're going to have to monitor and test 25% of our outfalls. So we're going to hire a subcontractor to come in and do that testing, and then we get the results. At that point, we're going to have to chase any bad results that we have. We got to chase down, where the illicit discharge is coming from. But these are all part of the new regulations. So right now, I'm estimating $50,000 is going to be required to do that in this next fiscal year. And that number will probably go up by that much or more each year after that. I'm getting a price from one of our consultants right now on at least getting the price on the monitoring and the inspections that need to be done next year, which is over and above the stuff that we're already doing, the education and the stenciling and storm drain stuff that we've been doing for years. So that's the big issue we have in the budget for the DPW. Everything else is basically the same. We don't need any additional staff. We're in pretty good shape. So, you know, bear in mind that $50,000 level service is really a necessity, not a request. If we don't get that money, then it comes out of repairs, patching, anything else where we can get the money, possibly a layoff, because we have to do it. We are, you know, well, we don't have to do it, I suppose. We could just be in non-compliance would be our other option. So yeah, it's going to be pretty daunting to you know, comply with the, some communities are talking about $1 million a year additional. You know, communities not all that much bigger than us, but I think they're, you know, padding it quite a bit, and I think we can get by and we can make it work, but yearly I'm going to be asking for a bump in that item to cover these costs. Next sheet, you got the cemetery budget, which is basically identical to last year. We're in decent shape. We were able, because we have some turnover and some employees, a long-time employee has retired, so we'll be replacing them with a newer employee. So we took a little bit of money out of the wages and we put it down into the cemetery miscellaneous, which would be used for tree removal services. We always have a list and we're always playing catch up with it. So I would recommend leaving that in there, and hopefully we can catch up on that list. There's always going to be a list. We're always going to be adding trees, but you know, the best we can do to catch up, the better off we are. Water and sewer budget, again, it's pretty similar to past years. If you'll notice coming down, the biggest change on this budget is under capital outlay. Last year it was $60,000. It was the purchase of a vehicle, and this year I have it at $300,000. And the reason for that is we, similar to drainage, we're under mandates to do a lot of work on our sewer system. We have started cameraing lines, flow metering different sections of town. Next year we're going to be required to what we did is we had to break the town up into sections, sewer sections, so we have 8 different districts, or, you know, main areas where the sewer flows into some bigger lines, and we had to figure out which of those had the worst infiltration problems. And then next year, we're starting now actually, for this fiscal year, we do have some money to do it. We're doing one of the areas where we have to kind of pinpoint the problems even more. So moving forward, the EPA and the DEP, what they used to have us do is anytime anybody added any sewage into the system, they would repair 3 or 4 times that much, and that's how the sewer system got repaired. No more. That's not. Now we have to show them what we're doing, when we're doing it, and they're mandating that we fix leakage in our sewer system. We've never been very aggressive in trying to find infiltration. For us, it's, you know, fixing infiltration. One thing that infiltration does that's good is it keeps the sewage flowing quickly, which is nice because you got water kind of helping the sewage flow. So when you fix it, it's getting problematic with backups, and problems can result from not enough flow. But that is not acceptable anymore. So this $300,000 will be used to fund part of the study that we need to do next year. The other part of that will be, I'm going to be looking to transfer money out of some borrowing that we did a few years ago that we didn't spend all of it, so there's a couple $100,000 available, money that's already borrowed and that we haven't spent, so we'll be transferring that over in an article. So that's what that item is for, and the rest of the budget is relatively the same. Our debt and interest is still pretty high, about $1.1 million. We have 2 more years on our 2 biggest notes. So after 2 more years, that number will drop by $500,000, over $500,000. So we have next year and the year after, and then we end up gaining a lot of that money back, which will be able to be used to do a lot of these sewer repairs too. So We did increase rates a couple years back, 3%, 3%, 3% this year. This next fiscal year, FY20, will be the last of those 3% increases. And then we'll see where we're at and decide if we want to do another one, or like I said, we do have that debt expiring, so, you know, we may be able to do just fine without raising rates again, so. The rubbish enterprise is doing well. I mean, we're collecting all the trash we need to collect, disposing of it, and we had a slight surplus last year in revenue, which was good. So we're building up a little bit of retained earnings in case something does happen that we need to take care of. The one thing I would plan on changing on this is under compactor maintenance. I had $120,000, and I want to bump that up. That pays for two different things. It's the leases on our trucks, which we just got a brand new truck in this week, actually. So that'll be the leases on the truck, which is a little bit more than $40,000 each. And then it's maintaining the equipment, maintaining the buckets, the recycle buckets, stuff like that. I'm going to add, and I'll get this off to Michael, $25,000 to that line item, and I'm going to pay for that added money with retained earnings, because we did have a decent amount of retained earnings. So I want to spend some of that, and the reason why I want to do that is just our oldest rubbish truck could use some body work and use some TLC to keep that thing up and running, so we don't get in a bind. We have to have 3 trucks. When we have a recycle week and a holiday week, we have to have that 3rd truck. The other reason why you need the 3rd truck is if one of the trucks goes down and we're in a recycle week, you can't run on 2. You always have to have at least 2 trucks. So if one's down, we need the 3rd as a backup. So I want to put a little bit of money into that and get that in a little bit better shape than it is right now. So I'll be changing the budget and sending it off to Michael. And again, it'll be paid for by retained earnings. We don't need to raise rates. The rates I believe right now are fine, and I don't think going into next year we need to worry about raising any of the rubbish rates, so, which is a good thing. Then I got the landfill enterprise, which should be the last part of the budget, is running well. We'll probably have 3 to 4 more years of bringing soils in. Tipping fees are up pretty high, and we have as much material as we would want to bring in, we're bringing in. So the revenue's doing very, very well. And again, we'll be talking about transferring money out of that and into the stabilization fund again. And it could be, you know, maybe much more substantial than it was last year. So be able to start getting a fair amount of money into that stabilization fund to be able to start doing some improvements. So, which is also good news. The only thing I'm looking for capital-wise this year would be a 1-ton truck. We've been trying to update them every couple of years. Last year we got our 6-wheel sander, which just came in this past week also. So we have actually 3 relatively new sanders. We have a new loader. We have, you know, we've been updating the equipment pretty good. We are in need of one more 1-ton truck, so that'll be all I'd be looking for capital this year. If you look at the going out into FY21 under the DPW facility improvements, that's an example of what kind of money we're going to be needing for the stormwater, because the DPW facility is probably the worst as far as stormwater. There's no collection system there. We wash trucks, so it is an area where we really need a grease trap. We need to put in detention basins, so that's probably going to be the first facility that we're going to need to upgrade to be in compliance with the stormwater regs. That's it.
Any questions from members of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you have any concerns going forward, maybe not this year, but with the changing market for recyclables?
I do. Not in the next year. We kind of in a unique situation where we're bringing our materials to E.L. Harvey, and Harvey is bringing materials to our landfill, so we're kind of keeping each other in check a little bit. Yeah. So our recycle and trash tipping fees have been stable for the past 2 years, and I expect them to be stable for at least a few more. But recycling is, if something doesn't change in the next couple of years, it's going to be a major problem. you know, it could end up to the point where our tip-in fees for our recyclables are substantially higher than our tip-in fees for our trash. Because I don't see the DEP changing their requirements that you have to, you know, they're really looking to get 80-90% recycles, you know, soon. We do maybe 50%, so you know, for every ton of trash, we recycle half a ton of, you know, there's a half a ton of recycles, which is about what our numbers are at right now. So to try to get it up to much higher than that, I mean, we do a pretty good job, and the people in the town do a good job, but they're gonna still require recycling. So what's gonna end up happening is they're gonna have to raise the tip and fees for the recycling so that they're gonna end up getting charged to have plastic recyclers use the material. Where they used to get paid paid for their product, they're gonna end up paying people to take it, and it's gonna get kicked back to us without question, so. Unless the market changes, who knows? You never know. Like 2 years ago, this wasn't even an issue until China really changed their rules and regulations on what they brought in, and now it's a major, really major issue right now, so. We've been kinda lucky where have been stabilized, not because of the market, but just because of our situation, so.
Keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, Chris, you were talking about before about the flow on the water lines or the sewer
Sewer lines,
improvements.
yeah.
Is that DEP or is that like?
It's EPA. It's
EPA
an
too?
EPA,
Okay.
and then it trickles down to DEP,
Okay, so
and
it's
it
both.
always trickles
Okay.
to us. But these are
I
new
was just curious.
EPA
Okay.
requirements, yeah.
Okay.
So.
The
All right.
EPA requirements are for the storm.
For the sewer and the stormwater,
Oh,
both.
okay.
Yeah.
And why did it change that we would say to somebody who was putting in a condominium complex, well, you've got to fix some, how did that change?
That isn't changing. So if somebody comes in and wants to put a development in, they still have to repair 4 gallons to every gallon of flow
Oh.
that they're adding. But they're not allowing the town to say, we're waiting for development. They're forcing the town and mandating the
I see.
town
Forcing it,
to
yeah.
fix
I see.
it regardless of development.
Okay.
In Clinton, we don't have a lot of development compared to a lot of communities. You know, we really haven't for a long time. We have small developments here and there, but so really, we haven't had a major amount of sewage repairs done by developers, and that's not going to be allowable anymore.
Okay. That's all the questions I had. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
I'd back up again.
Yep.
So you're going to stay right there?
Sure.
Next item on the agenda is street and sidewalk maintenance discussion. The superintendent of public works and the police chief will be available for a discussion with the board on street and sidewalk maintenance, plowing, and parking enforcement. So chief, are you going to come up? Basically, Selectman Kerrigan is, this is near and dear to his heart, and sort of off the microphone, I always sort of tease him and tell him that it is, in my opinion, an unsolvable problem, sort of like Don Quixote tilting with the windmills. But after giving it some thought, I mean, one thing I think, just to get the discussion going, and then I would invite anyone else. I mean, I think that we could, talking about snow removal, my thought on snow removal would be that we make a commitment that next year, all of the sidewalks that are in front of town facilities, or could be considered town sidewalks, should be plowed. I think we need to do that before we go fussing at the citizens about their sidewalks.
Yeah.
You know, we ought to, remove the beam from our own eyes before
Yeah.
we find
We
the speck of
did,
dust.
not to interrupt, but we did start doing a lot more
Oh, I know
of
we
the
have.
town sidewalks
Yeah.
in the past couple of years.
But
And
there's-
I've been telling my guys to concentrate, on the ones in front, but they haven't, I don't think they've figured out quite yet exactly which buildings we're
Right.
talking about.
I'm
and that could be
not
better.
wishing to criticize anyone.
No,
This
of
is
course,
just
yeah.
my sort of moving closer to Mr. Kerrigan on this issue. I mean, and one of the things that helped me start thinking about this is, I pick up my grandchildren every Monday at CCD at St. John's. It was pointed out to me that the children have to walk from the elementary school on the road to get to CCD because the sidewalk in front of the,
Pushing the snow. onto the
yeah,
sidewalk.
yeah,
I
so
see that.
they have
Yeah.
to. So I thought, well, perhaps it's not so much of a windmill that Mr. Kerrigan is tilting at. So that's my sort of, what are you laughing at? I'm fessing up to my, to my error, to the error of my ways.
Certainly agree with that. I think the issue becomes who does it.
Right.
That's always been the question. Now, the schools do some, we do some, you know, the people, property owners are supposed to do in front of their own properties, Parks and Rec does some. So I think one of the questions is I think as far as sidewalks in general in town, not just in front of the town buildings, but I think we need to establish, there's two different issues. We have a bylaw that says that's 150 years old that we need to remedy or decide what we're going to do with, that property owners are supposed to clear their in front of their own sidewalks. It's ignored by a lot of people, not everybody, but it's ignored by a lot of people. The town does take care of some, you know, as much as we can sometimes. We're not really geared towards doing sidewalks because we never really did a lot of sidewalks. We could gear up to do more, obviously. But I guess the question, one of the questions that we need to answer together is what sidewalks do we want to prioritize? Do we want to do Main Street, High Street, Chestnut Street? You know, we need to pinpoint what sidewalks are important as a community for us to clear. And then, because I think the problem with our bylaws, it says every sidewalk in town has to be done by the property owner. So what ends up happening with that is, if you enforce it, you really can't spot enforce it. You can't say, okay, I'm gonna go to Chestnut Hill and fine everybody on Chestnut Hill, but then don't go to Crown Street and fine everybody on Crown Street. That's kind of spot enforcement, and I don't think that's right, you know? So we need to fix the global problem of our bylaw, or we need to enforce our bylaw throughout the whole community, which would be a pretty daunting undertaking. And I think, and we started in on this a little bit at the beginning of the year, and we never finalized it, but education certainly would be helpful for sure, too. So I guess that's one, I think it needs to be looked at kind of globally on what sidewalks are important to us as, you know, the people, leaders of the community, I guess, you know. And I don't think it has to be every sidewalk in town.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, just to follow up on, I mean, I think we've already covered this, but it's not, I'm not here to scold anybody.
Oh, of
I
course.
think, you know.
I don't take it that way.
I don't think anybody, I don't think I'm unique in that I'm the only one who's heard complaints. So it's, yeah, I'd like to just, instead of talking about this when it snows and forgetting on in the summertime, I'd love to come up with a plan for communicating and for enforcing and seeing what kind of town do we want to be and what it costs, and letting people know that, you know, if this is what we want, this is what it's going to cost and what it needs. I don't want to hang you guys out to dry or expect you to do something that we don't give you funding or manpower to accomplish. So, yeah, I don't know if we want to, you know, if we want to kick this to a subcommittee and talk about that, or, I mean, it's going to be a culture change, and it's, I don't imagine it's going to be a light switch that we flip and things get better, but I just want to make sure that we're being honest with the people out there, that if you know, we have aspirations to be a walkable town 12 months a year, to have a downtown district that people can get in and out of, you know, safely and easily. What is that going to cost? You know, what are the challenges as far as putting snow someplace else? As I said at our last meeting, I don't know a lot of these things. You know, a lot of people think, oh, why can't they just take a Bobcat down there at 5 o'clock in the morning and scoop all this stuff up? I'm sure there are logistical challenges that I'm not aware of, and I'd like to just do the best job we can to identify, you know, steps to get to where we want to be. So
Right.
I think we're on the same page as far as looking at what thoroughfares we want to cover. You know, are there, you know, main school arteries? Is it downtown business district? town properties, looking at that stuff and seeing, what that would cost, maybe rolling it out over a couple winters, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to start having the discussion because it's not fair to anybody to, now that thaw's here, move on to other things, which I know we all have plenty of problems to deal with, but we get caught with our pants down again in the winter, and then everybody gets
No.
yelled at, and everybody gets grumpy, and then nothing happens.
Now's
So-
the best time to
Sure.
talk about it. Starting now is the best time to talk
Right.
about it, because you get time to fix it before next winter. There's different issues. There's snow removal, and then there's sidewalk clearing.
Yep.
Some of the sidewalk clearing, we go up Main Street, we go up Water Street, we go, we do different areas, and we snow blow it into, front lawns or wherever it goes, and it works. We go down Cameron Hill, we try to get around the police station, the fire station, but when you get to High Street, you can't use a snow blower. So, I know there's people and I've had people approach me, and I'm sure you do too, is why don't we do snow removal after every storm on High Street? And the answer is we can do it, we just haven't done it. And I'm not gonna make the determination on my own to spend an extra $150,000 a year on snow removal on High Street after every storm. That needs to be a bigger decision than that. And the other question is, we gotta think about where do we put the snow? We put it, we used to do it after big storms or multiple big storms. This year, we just didn't have any big storms, so we didn't do any snow removal at all. But if we're gonna start doing it every storm, what you run into is you run into problems with manpower, because if the guys are out plowing all night long, they can't work the next night. Again, they're not machines. They can't work 2 nights in a row, and then they might get another storm the next night, so that adds 2 more nights to it, So really what would probably have to happen is a subcontractor who doesn't plow at all, or has enough equipment to plow and use different guys to do snow removal, would have to come in every storm and do snow removal. So those are the questions, and, you could be talking $10,000 a storm to clear High Street, and then again, what's downtown is the other answer. The other question that needs to be answered: where does downtown start and stop? High Street is always the thought, but Church Street's part of downtown, and do you do in front of the elementary school? So the extent of the snow removal, if we're gonna do that, has to be kind of discussed, so we can, and then we need to find a place to dump all the snow. Which, we've used the parking lot up at the schools.
Yeah.
It's not even close to ideal. It's not even in the ballpark of ideal, because, the debris and the crap that's left behind when spring comes, it's not fair to the people that use that place. They're up there and they can't use a third of their parking lot when baseball season comes around, because it's still melting and it's muddy and it's, there's trash everywhere, so.
Well, just.
But these are issues that we can start.
I'm speaking generally, and not to nail you to anything tonight, but do you think it's logistically possible? Are there impossibilities that will prevent us from doing things a little better?
No, of course
Okay.
not, no.
All right.
And again, it might be another snow blower
Sure.
or two, or,
Yep.
but that, again, those aren't, you're not talking about a $500,000 piece of equipment. These are
Right.
relatively modestly priced. We have a Bobcat that we use all year round, and then we put a snow blower attachment to it. So it's, they're certainly fixable. It's just a matter of setting policy and determining extent is really some of the biggest things. Then once we clear a sidewalk, it gets to him. Now we get a nice cleared sidewalk that people decide to park on. So which is also not.
Thanks for plowing parking space for me.
Yeah.
So, Chief, do you have any insight on, enforcement's, again, that's a whole another mountain to climb, but.
I thought I'd be talking about the cars that.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, with the parking.
that are there. We've been trying with just on the snow nights.
Yeah.
And people get used to parking there, and if we get a call, we'll tell them. If that's what done, we'd probably be towing 30 cars, 40 cars a storm.
But they get used.
People don't like
once
getting their car towed.
they don't like getting towed.
No, I can't
It
imagine
also
they do.
doesn't take them more than once to realize that.
Yeah.
One thing we did see, I actually talked to Jim Boudry, the electrical inspector, but we saw an actual, like, a blue flashing light, like at key intersections in town and a sign that said,
Snow emergency.
snow ban in effect when light is flashing.
Yep.
And you turn that light on when there's a snow ban. Right now, we put it on, the town website, he puts it on Facebook for the police Facebook. But that gets to not all that many people. But if you took 3 or 4 key intersections in town, and also it would just be a switch, you go down and flick a switch. Now the light's flashing, people know it's a snow emergency, parking ban is in effect.
That's a good
I think
idea.
that would make the most sense this town, it's very unique that you pretty much have to get to certain intersections if you're going anywhere in town. So if you get in your car, you're gonna hit one of these 3 or 4 intersections, no matter where you live, if you're driving in Clinton. So if we set that up and now people know there's a parking ban, they can't say, I didn't know there was a parking ban because the light's flashing and more than likely they would have driven by.
What would help you guys most moving forward? I mean, what would you, as
I
far
think
as from us?
For me, it's a consensus on what we're gonna do. That's all I need, a consensus and a commitment that we're gonna do this. But it needs to be a consensus, and I need, I'll be involved with the direction, but I need the board to decide what do we want it to look like. Because, like I said, if I have a $350,000 snow budget, and I know it all depends on snow, I mean, you can go over, but I don't want to spend $700,000 and then next year, I thought we wanted to, do more snow removal.
Well, I think to the chairman's point was really good. I mean, we should obviously start somewhere. I think it should be with the all town properties, branch out from there from the major walking points in
that
town,
we can
whether
do
it's
with-
High Street, Water Street, Main Street, Chestnut Street, Chestnut Hill down here, Cameron Street, those type of things.
Yeah.
You see a lot of pedestrians, those type of things.
And that
So
we're
that's
trying
where I
to do
would
a lot
start.
better now, and
Yeah.
I think we can do better,
Yeah.
and I think,
And branch out from there.
maybe even buy one more. Sidewalk plows or snow blowers are kind of difficult things. You run into obstacles, you do, fire hydrants and telephone poles, and the size, if it's too small, it's not big enough to move the snow. If it's too big, you can't get by the obstacles, but we can look into some more of those too, so.
Did you want to set up I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Fowler.
I too agree with what the chairman said. I think one of our primary focuses for the immediate future is to do the best job we can with all town-owned properties, because it is a bylaw. It's our responsibility, just like it's everybody else's responsibility. I've got no objection to looking at the bylaw and looking at modifying it or changing it, but I do know it works in other communities. The city of Worcester is extremely aggressive in enforcing that property owner responsibility bylaw. I don't think we as a community can afford, as a town, to pay for snow removal on all the sidewalks that we'd like to see open. So I personally think that bylaw of some version has to be in place, and I believe that we have to have a consistent, effective plan to enforce it, because people get cited and then they clear their sidewalks. One of the problems that I see is if we make a commitment to clearing sidewalks with taxpayer-owned equipment and personnel on our primary, most important sidewalks, which I agree we should be doing. The town does a great job on Main Street as soon as they can to clear the sidewalks to the schools. But how does that relate to taxpayers who are paying for that but don't live on those streets?
I agree.
I don't know how we resolve that kind of a conflict, but I think a good first step is to make sure our house is clean.
Yeah, that doesn't take a lot of effort to do, so.
As a sidebar to the conversation, I'm still concerned about parking enforcement in the municipal lots. Because of the winter, it's the only time it's easy to identify people who are abusing the process or the rules that we have in place. And I think part of this conversation has to be better signage and better enforcement in the municipal lots, because I go through Oxford and now the lot that you took care of last year, and I see cars there days, multiple days after the storm. You know the residents, you know the residents of Oxford Court, you know they know they're not supposed to be there, and they don't make any effort to move. And the only way of visually knowing it's going on is during the winter, but it goes on all year long.
Yeah, we did buy signs, we have signs for those lots. Right now, they're not posted as 12-hour parking, which is,
Right.
that's the new,
Yep.
regulation we put into effect a year or so ago. I didn't have the posts in time and the ground froze, so I have the posts, I have the signs, so those will be going in this year. So at least we'll have a 12-hour parking sign. You really can't tow somebody,
Right.
12-hour parking if
No.
you don't have it posted. So
Right.
we will have those posted this year, so I think that'll be helpful too.
But one of I know this is minor compared to the townwide issue that we're really talking about, but Oxford Court they have a prohibition on parking during the day at, they can't pick their
Yeah.
12-hour cycle is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Those primary spots are supposed to be for the public doing business on High Street. And if they're not available to them, people may not do business on High Street.
Agreed.
And I think we have to do a better job, a consistent, repetitive job of enforcing the parking ban in that lot.
We've been going down there, Bill, almost daily going down there. And a lot of those cars that have been there for 12 hours or 2 days, the plates do not come back to Oxford Court. We have no way of identifying them. Some of them belong to the apartments across the street, beside the Old Timers. Both sides of the Old Timers are up on High Street. Others have out-of-state plates on them. They may be staying at Oxford Court, but I have no way of telling whether they're at Oxford Court. But those people that live at Oxford Court, very few are parking there now because they've been getting the $20 or $25 ticket, whatever it is, that the fine is. And we've been down there pretty consistently doing that.
But if we get the signage up that it's
Signage
limited to
critical.
12-hour
The
parking,
12-hour parking, then they're gonna have to move them anyways.
Yeah, that's
Move
key.
from one spot to another.
They should be up next month.
how would the police department go about enforcing that 12-hour? How do you identify a car?
It's gonna go over 2 shifts, so one shift's gonna have to give it to the other shift.
Right. But it's doable.
And then over here, we talked about it, myself and Mike, there was a car over there, there was snow all around, it was there for a couple of days, we run the plate, belongs to a, 90-year-old lady that lives over here at Corcoran House, and I don't know whether there's some sort of agreement that Corcoran House can park there, the residents can park there, right? I think, if you look back over the years, I think that was discussed at one time when they were doing the Corcoran House over, so we'd have to find that out.
The Corcoran House has 10 spots.
That's for their employees, for their residents
And visitors.
What?
I thought it was for visitors.
Visitors and employees, I think, right there, the 7 parking spaces or 8 parking spaces. It's gotta be reviewed. Something tells me that the residents were gonna be allowed to park there, but I don't know if it's in
I
writing
was on the
somewhere.
subcommittee that sort of managed that whole thing years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't remember any agreement that their residents would be parking in that Walnut Street lot. Do you, Mike? You were here, Michael.
I don't offhand, would have.
Offhand, I don't-
have to
Something-
research the
Well,
file.
anyways, it was an elderly lady
Yeah.
that owned that car, and she mustn't go out every day to use the car, she may stay in, especially after it snows out, she probably doesn't go out for 12 hours, so.
But I mean,
I don't know where they're gonna.
and I don't
park.
want to appear hard-hearted.
Pardon?
I don't want to appear hard-hearted, because someday I hope to be 90 myself. But if you have a rule,
Yeah,
and a person is able to maintain their car and is able to drive their car, I think they have to move their car regardless of their age and where they live.
right.
Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, we did
No,
talk
it's
about
no
it, and-
12-hour, I know it's a 12-hour.
but there's no 12-hour sign yet, so we can't do anything but.
Right.
But after 72 hours is considered abandoned car, and then we can tow them. And generally, we just don't go up and tow somebody's car because people don't like having their cars towed. So we'll find out where they're at and we'll tell them, hey, your car's been there for 72 hours. You can't just leave it there forever.
Oh, I'm fine with that. I mean, as long as,
Once.
you know,
Yeah, we'll do, yeah.
but you go over there and the cars are sitting there piled up with snow, and it's obvious that a lousy plowing job was done because these cars are sitting there and are in the way, you know, and,
We've had a lot of people move, we knocked on the doors, and we've had people move.
Once the sign's up though, then,
Mhm.
you know, it's a lot.
Then they've got
enforcement
fair
gets easier.
warning,
And they
and
can
then-
see it, it's gonna be a very clear sign for all parking, so.
okay, is there anything else? What's the pleasure of the board with regards to further discussion and tackling of this problem? Let me just add before I say that, I believe that High Street, the snow should be removed. We're going to be going to town meeting this year with, looking for a substantial sum of money to upgrade that street in the hopes of attracting more businesses and making it a more vibrant downtown. And I think that we should begin to at least consider the commitment to remove the snow. Just as an aside, and understanding that your guys are out all night, and sometimes there's 2 snowstorms in a row, I would hope that the merchants on High Street and the citizens would stop to consider, we do live in New England, and sometimes there's going to be some inconveniences when there's snow. So perhaps we wouldn't be able to remove it within the first 2 or 3 days. And, you know, we just have to do the best we can, you know, we live in New England. But anyway, that's my thought on High Street. But how would the board like to proceed on further discussion of this difficulty and perhaps developing a strategy for identifying what we're going to do and how we're going to do it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think the board's at least expressed its interest in getting something done of consequence, and I support the idea of referring it to a subcommittee, if not its own, an existing subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think there needs to be some sort of committee and focus group on this to address the problem.
All right, so should we take that as a motion to form a
That's a motion
subcommittee?
to form a subcommittee.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to form a subcommittee on
Snow
snow
removal and
removal,
parking.
sidewalks, and parking. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion's carried. And so maybe at the next meeting, we'll try to recruit some of our members to sit on that committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
very
on. I
much.
really
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. You guys will keep me here all night.
What is it next? Yeah.
Oh, flood protection, is that you?
Oh, is that next, or is it?
Well,
Yes.
where am I?
Oh, Walnut Street's second to
Oh,
last.
it's the second item,
Oh, all right, so.
yeah.
Oh.
But I think there's a bunch in a row, so both of you.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
sit there, yeah, it'll only take. Next item on the agenda is, there is administrative business listed, but there is no administrative business. Old and new business, DCR grant for flood protection in Clinton.
Yes, all right. Now, I was confused. Yes,
That's yours also?
I'm involved with that as well. Myself
Okay.
and Phil are both involved, and Michael. We did receive an earmark for $50,000 to do some flood mitigation along the Nashua River. Phil and I went to Conservation Commission meeting, not this past meeting, but last month, and discussed how we would go about getting approval to do that. So we would have to file an order of conditions. They were very much in favor of the project and didn't think it would be onerous to get the order of conditions. So I have contacted a wetland specialist that we deal with often, and we're gonna meet with him on Friday to discuss just putting together a pretty quick order of conditions. It's not gonna be, it doesn't need to be all that detailed. And our thoughts are to remove the debris in the Nashua River basically from upstream. So along Green Street, we'd sit up on Green Street and basically strap the debris and pull it up and then truck it away. The focus area that the DCR and the MWRA have been kind of honest about cleaning up the bridge on Water Street up to roughly the Weetabix, the end of the Weetabix parking lot. The biggest one, that's where the lowest lying residences are in that area, the lowest elevation as compared to the river. So that's where the focus would be. The biggest problem areas are the two abandoned railroad trestle bridges that are there. They're literally holding back 3 feet of the river on one side to the next. It's probably 3 feet higher, and it's basically across the entire trestle dam is completely full of fallen logs and driftwood, and that's where the main focus would be. The rest of it would be, and while we're in there, we'd be getting shopping carts and tires and other debris just to clean the area up as best we can. So I think the first order of business would be we'd have to send a scope of work to the DCR. It's very brief. I think Phil put it together this week. It's a very brief scope of work, just basically showing the area, some pictures, and what we intend on doing with the money. We do need to spend this money by June 30th, so the schedule is pretty tight. So what we would need to do is, while we're working on the order of conditions, we'd also be working on a bid package, which we're gonna have to decide whether we do a lump sum, time and materials. It's kind of an odd job because it's not, it's not as quantifiable as a lot of different projects. You're doing a road project, you can measure how much of everything you're gonna be doing. But so that would be a little bit of discussion between myself and Michael, and I don't think we need to get into hiring a consultant engineer to do this. It's $50,000. It doesn't go that far with prevailing wages, and we are going to have to spend a little bit on the order of conditions. So to start getting into a design engineer to try to put a package together, we'd be spending half our money on engineering, when I think we could just put the package together ourselves and get it out to bid and get it done before June 30th. But it's a great project. I mean, the DCR has been on me for a long time to try to clean some of that area up. They could have probably gone down. They should have maybe gone and cleaned it up themselves, but it's their water, right? But it does need to be cleaned, and it's great that we got the money and free money from the state, but still free to the town of Clinton. So.
Nice.
Okay, so this is informational. You don't need any action from us.
Do you need any to accept the grant, is it, or is it?
Yeah, well, I think at some point we just need to be, accept whatever the scope of work is going to be, so we can submit it to the state. So, if we think how long that would be, so the board can review and approve it, if we could have that for the next meeting, or.
I mean, did you have the scope of work? You put something together, right? I mean,
Yes, the scope of work is, and we have have a brief discussion as to, again, as Chris said, is this a lump sum job, is this a time materials job? I mean, our intent is to prioritize debris in the river in those low-lying areas where, that are most prone to flooding that would affect property. But we're going to go as far as we can with the money. So really, in terms of the scope of work, it's really a question of, do we define a limit of the project, or do we define an intent and say we'll just keep spending till the money's spent. As Chris said, this is kind of a one-off thing, in terms of cost estimating or putting it together, bid proposal, and having an expectation of what's going to come back. That isn't there, at least it's not informed by experience. So we'll be doing that shortly this week.
But I think the scope of work is literally what is just going to be a few sentences. We're going to remove the debris and driftwood. So I don't know if it would be overly necessary to come to another meeting to.
Okay, yeah, because it doesn't. Yeah, I don't believe it has to be any lengthy. I think it just has to outline to the state how the money is going to be used. So if the board feels comfortable with that explanation, and we could put that into writing to send into the state if that's something that we'd want to proceed on.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board direct the town administrator, the economic development director, and the superintendent of public works to proceed in this matter as they deem is the most responsible manner for the town of Clinton.
A second.
Motion's made and seconded to instruct the people mentioned to proceed on this matter on the manner that they consider to be the most efficient and workable. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next item is the Walnut Street renovation construction contract.
So, I know Phil is a little under the weather, so I'll do most of the talking. So, Phil's office got a grant for $573,000 to pay for a portion of the project to reconstruct Walnut Street from Church Street to Water Street. So the project entails, the grant itself would be basically paying for all the road work, curbing, new sidewalks, and we're creating parking, so we're gonna be pushing, I think we've talked about this at other meetings,
Yeah.
but we're pushing the curbing back so we can create formal parking, on-road parking, and new concrete sidewalks. The other portion of the project is we're gonna put a new water line in before we do that. That'll be paid for by the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, and that'll be a part of the project as well. The project includes some drainage improvements as needed because when you move the curbing, the catch basins are now all in the wrong spot. So there are some drainage improvements that go along with the project. The project, I think the budget, or the base bid amount for the, you don't have it here.
It was $905,000.
$905,000. The low bidder is E.H. Perkins Company, local company. They're actually the same company who worked for Mass DOT and did the Water Street project, so we know them very well. They're a reputable company. We did get letters of recommendation from our engineer to award it to them. So the project base bid value was $905,400. There was an alternate that we don't currently have money for, and it was to put in some decorative street lighting from Church Street to Prospect Street. So 5 or 6 decorative light fixtures to get away from the regular street lights in that area. That was $58,000. So that includes the service pedestal, which is where the meter socket is, and then all the underground conduit, the street light foundations, and the street lights themselves. So at this point, we don't have the funding to do that. So, the $905,000 is the funding for that would come from the grant, the Water Enterprise Fund,
32,000. What we're proposing is that the difference between the grant and Water and Sewer Enterprise funding and the cost of the project, which ultimately estimated will be about $65,000, that the $32,500 of that come from the Community Development Fund, which is money under control of my office. The purposes for which this money would be used are consistent with the legislation that enabled that money back in 1974 because it's in our slum and blight area. The remainder, we're asking for approximately $50,000 to come from Chapter 90. That would include the additional shortfall in the contract, in the work amount, as well as a small amount of contingency. We think about $17,000 in contingency. So we're asking for that money. I believe when we made the grant application, we authorized the expenditure of Chapter 90, but now that we have the actual numbers, that's what is being proposed to provide the funding for this contract.
So the grant we have, and we would need approval to spend the program money and the Chapter 90 money, and then award the contract based on that is what our...
Mr. Chairman?
Mhm.
A couple of questions regarding the lighting at alternate. When would that have to be executed to be incorporated? It seems to me that we're spending a significant amount of time, effort, and energy between studies and everything else to improve downtown lighting, and we're moving forward incrementally with that. It seems a shame to redo this street and not incorporate the lighting component of that, even though this street probably wouldn't have been in phase 1 of our lighting program. It seems almost irresponsible to be digging up the street and not take the time to put the infrastructure in for the lighting. So I'm wondering, I'm asking if there's a way that we can get that executed and incorporated in this
I guess I'm just trying to think of, the first thing they would do was they'd put the water line in, and the underground utility work would be the first thing done. So it would be a month before they get out there. So right now we're in mid-March, by the time they get the award, it's gonna be late April when they mobilize and get started. So late April, they're gonna do about a month's worth of water work to replace the whole water line. So you're into late May. So I would guess they would want to do the underground, because they're gonna end up digging out the sidewalks. They're gonna dig all the sidewalks out, mill the road, pulverize the road, basically reconstruct the road, and do the base course of pavement. And so prior to the base course of pavement, they're gonna want to put that underground electrical in.
So
So
July
you're talking
1?
about, by sometime in June or July.
Just
So
to-
the question is, there's a few different ways to get money for that portion of the project, and one would be to appropriate it at the next town meeting. The other would be we don't have a tremendous amount of Chapter 90 money left over after these projects, and we have High Street projects that we're spending money on. But any day now, we should be getting our apportionment for next fiscal year. Usually it's this time of year, but sometimes it's later, you never know. So it's like probably we'll be getting $350,000. So there's enough money to be able to put some lights in the ground. The question is, we could award the contract without the lights. That way we have enough money to award the contract without the ad alternate. And I'm sure they would hold their price on the ad alternate if in a few months from now we end up getting this money. We wanted to put the lights in, we could add it in without there being a problem. We're not required to
Execute the ad alternate.
execute. And luckily, the low bidder with the ad alternate and the low bidder without the ad alternate is the same. So regardless of whether we include that in now or later, it'd be the same contractor who would be the low bidder. So, I mean, procurement-wise and award-wise, do you guys see any issue with awarding it on the base bid and adding that in later?
Yeah,
Do it as a change order.
it's a change order for less than 25% of the base contract.
Well, it's a change order, but it was an ad alternate, so you really probably couldn't call it an ad alternate. You'd have to just call it a change order later. But it should be fine. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it'd give us a few months to decide whether we can come up with the money to do that work, for sure. And I would like to do it too, I mean, we're not talking about the whole length, because really that's getting really residential when you get down further, but right here in front of the town hall, and we're only
Right.
talking 5 or 6 lights. It'd be kind of diagonal from each other.
And adjacent to Central Park, and probably the second phase of any lighting program that we're gonna execute.
Yeah.
It was my intention to make a motion to the effect that we approve the award of the contract for $905,000 and encourage or demonstrate the intent of this board to move forward with the ad alternate lighting component if or when the funding became available in Chapter 90 money. But I'm not able to make that motion because now I'm chairing the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I will make that motion.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. The next item on our agenda,
That's it.
Actually, may I just some clarification? So, are we going to are we going to offer the contract, the award for $905,000 now with the intent of amending the contract, or are we going to? Okay.
you can advise the
Okay.
the vendor that
Yeah.
it's your intent to execute the ad alternate, but you can't do it until funding's
I'm
available.
assuming that would include, because of the discussion, would include authorization for me to proceed with spending Chapter 90 money.
That was the intent
of
of
the.
the-
Vote on that, but that's the intent of the.
Right.
So you have to come back for that. Or do you want him to vote on that?
Yeah, they probably should vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, so move.
$50,000.
$50,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
the board voted to authorize the contract of $905,400 and to authorize executing the ad alternate and paying for it out of future Chapter 90 money if or when that became available.
I
In
think
both-
that's great.
Perfect.
That's good.
Agreed.
So it would be a shame to come all the way up Church Street and,
No,
it's
it's,
pitch dark.
I'm grateful for the board's vote in this, this is kind of just relative to the primary area of downtown, a position similar to Nelson Street. It's nice to begin to put these pieces together.
Plus, it helps the parking because it makes it an avenue that you want to walk down, you want to park on it, and it's nice sidewalk, so everything about it would tie nicely into downtown for sure.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Next item is the Montechusett Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. The Community and Economic Development Director is recommending several parcels of land in Clinton for inclusion in the Montechusett Region Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Mr. Duffy.
Mr. Jakonski, thank you. Members of the board, very briefly, we received a solicitation from our Regional Planning Commission about 2.5 weeks ago, seeking communities to nominate projects for inclusion in the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. The CEDS is a regional planning tool that's intended to build capacity and take a regional approach to economic development. One salient aspect of the CEDS is that there is a federal economic development funding agency called the Economic Development Administration, and there are two principal threshold requirements for application to that agency for funding. One is that you be in an economic development district, and we are, and the other is that your project for which you're applying for funding be included in your regional CEDS. That said, the CEDS is updated at least once every 5 years. It can be amended during that period, so if a project comes up, we can ask that the CEDS committee reconvene and include a project, amend an approved strategy to the plan. But this being ground floor for the 2019 update, I'm submitting to you a list of projects to be considered for inclusion in the regional strategies. These projects would have to be included after the signature of the chairman of the board, but each of these projects, with the exception of the last, has been preceded by some level of planning or feasibility analysis, and they are listed here, 7 projects. I'd be happy to read them to you for the record. That is the Rock Bassett Supernon site at 172 Shirling Street, which is proposed for industrial commercial reuse. The Bigelow Spinning Mills on Main Street, proposed for a industrial, commercial, and mixed use, also part of a downtown strategy. 285 West Boylston Street, and as well as the town-owned parcel 37 South Meadow Road, which is being used partially for the landfill, I understand. That's approximately 23 acres of industrially zoned but landlocked property in the southwest corner of town. You may remember that a few weeks ago, the owners of the property were before you, preliminary basis, seeking a right-of-way. But if there is something that can be done to affect the development of that property, and it can be assisted by grant funding, we'd like to see it. It is our largest industrially zoned parcel in town. It's just not developable at the moment because of constraints. The fire station project, the Counterpane Brook Basin drainage improvements. As you know, both in 2009 and 2017, we had meaningful flooding at Night Pro and along Main Street, causing millions of dollars of damage in the aggregate. If there is an infrastructure project that can be identified that would address the likelihood or the effects of that kind of event in the future, we included it in this project. And as you know, we applied collaboratively with NIPRO for an EPA grant, waiting to hear in April on the outcome of that planning grant. Downtown revitalization, which is a subject we've talked about much on this project. I include that generically. I can't think of a kind of a single project that might be attractive for an EDA grant, but as you kind of articulate these projects, you try to be specific enough that you're giving people an idea of what you're proposing to do, but generic enough that you can move the idea around if circumstances change. And then the final one is a collaborative workspace. This was a recommendation that came out of the Bigelow Mills feasibility analysis. Collaborative workspaces are kind of incubator spaces that are intended to, support emerging businesses. As a matter of fact, the SEDS meeting on the 27th, which I believe you received an invitation, it's in your packet, is going to be held at one that is opening in Gardner just now. Fitchburg, the Idea Lab, just opened one as well. It's an idea that we've not considered earnestly, but it is something that has been recommended to us to consider, and so for that purpose, I'm including it in this 5-year plan. So that is on an informational basis. I'd be happy to answer any questions or consider any or include any projects that members of the selectmen would like to consider. There are other projects we're working on that really don't rise to the level of having a regional impact, so I haven't included them. But if it's the pleasure of the board and the opinion of the town administrator that I should seek the endorsement of this list from your board prior to the chairman's signature, then I'd ask that motion be made when you feel comfortable.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to endorse this list for the Montechusett Regional Economic Strategy and authorize the chairman to sign it. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Mr. Chairman. I should have those nomination forms completed by the end of the week, so I'll get.
Okay. KRD Growers Incorporated entity change. KRD Growers Incorporating is requesting an amendment to their recently approved host community agreement to change the name of their entity to KRD Growers LLC, which will site a recreational marijuana retail and cultivation facility at 89 Parker Street in Clinton. What's the pleasure of the board?
So moved,
Oh,
Mr. Chair.
Michael.
Yeah.
Just to further clarify, we have, the board had approved and we'd executed a host community agreement. So I think the recommendation may be to, that this would be an amendment to that, instead of redoing the whole agreement, because throughout the process, they were incorporated.
Right.
But they would like, for whatever business benefits, would like to change it to LLC. So it would be through an amendment to the current HCA to approve that request.
Right. Okay. We're going to make a motion, Mr.?
So moved, Mr. Chair, yep.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to authorize town council and the town administrator to change that, to amend that agreement to recognize the name change. There any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next item is the annual town meeting warrant, setting dates. Michael?
Mr. Chair, just as the board each year usually opens, formally opens the warrant and gives a deadline, generally we give about 4 weeks to give notice to the departments and public. So if the board deems acceptable, probably at your second meeting in April, could be the deadline to bring a draft warrant to the board, that April 17th. So it could open officially tonight until April 17th.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board with regard to this issue?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we open the timeline for the annual town meeting warrant articles today and close it on April 17th.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the town warrant effective this evening and close it on April 17th. There any discussion? It's been made and seconded. There any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Last year was my first meeting on this board, and I did a informal postmortem on my website. I don't know if I brought it up here, just ways I thought we could make town meeting better. I thought we got caught with our pants down a little bit, especially on the local sales tax option, and not having someone who is upfront speaking about the article. So I would strongly recommend, I don't know if we want to make a part of this, but I think to make the meeting move smoother, that if anyone wants to put an article on the warrant, that they come prepared to defend it, so it doesn't fall to people who are unprepared or it seems like we got behind on one and it just caused a lot of problems, and I would be very hesitant to support any article that doesn't have a ready defender willing to speak. So maybe
Okay.
that's informative, but I just don't want it to be a surprise later.
Well, my thought on that is this. We wouldn't know that no one was going to speak on its behalf till the night of the town meeting.
Well, I guess that's what I would be pushing, like, if someone comes forward and says, if they think it's important enough to put on the warrant, that we should have someone designated to be willing to answer questions, and if we think it's important enough to put before the people, we should be able to explain why.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I support Selectman Carrigan's suggestion as it pertains to town board or town-sponsored articles. Unfortunately,
It's a citizen's petition.
the citizens
That's
petition,
fine. Well, they're on the line.
we can't impose any
Sure.
requirement, although it would behoove the people who put the effort
Yep.
into putting citizens petitions on the warrant to be prepared to speak. But we can't make that a mandate.
I understand.
But we can request
I guess
that.
anything under our purview.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so where are we? We're still on the issue of,
town meeting.
from now until April 17th.
Discussion.
Yes, and we're under discussion. Any more discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. And certainly we'll instruct, particularly town boards, that if they do put something on the warrant, that it is our expectation that they will explain it or defend it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Reserve fund transfer for insurance premiums. The town administrator is requesting approval for a reserve fund transfer from the Finance Committee for payment of the police and fire accident insurance policy for the remainder of the fiscal year. Invoice for this policy was sent after the budget was set, and the appropriation was $5,000 short of cost. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Michael,
just
you
to-
want to say something?
Yeah, just to
I
follow
just thought it
up.
was pretty clear.
Yeah, sure. Just about the, it would be $5,684.
all right.
And as you did indicate, Mr. Chair, we did get our final notice after we'd already set the budget. I asked insurance to make sure this year we had the more solid numbers. And in fact, we just met today. We were scheduled for yesterday and we got moved to today. So we did meet today and I did get some pretty solid numbers for all of our property, workers' comp, our police fire accidents. So hopefully going forward, next year, it wouldn't be an issue. So this would be a request to the Finance Committee, which would be in competition with the fire chief's request as well. But this will help get that premium paid so it doesn't get canceled. The police fire accident covers the medical for the injured on duty for police and fire, as well as reimbursement for part of cost of the wages that we're obligated to cover. So it is a pretty important premium.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's $5,684. What's the pleasure of the board?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded to approve the request for a reserve fund transfer from the Finance Committee for payment of the police and fire accident insurance. Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. The superintendent of schools is requesting a representative from the Board of Selectmen to serve on the bargaining committee for renewal of the non-instructional personnel contract, which expires on 6/30/19.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I believe representation on collective bargaining for the schools is the purview of the chairman
Chairman.
or his designee. And if you weren't inclined to serve, I would volunteer my services.
Okay. I take that to mean you'd like to do it.
Yes, sir.
So I just appoint them, or do we have a vote? Or what?
You just designate me as your
All right,
representative.
then I designate you as my representative,
Thank you, sir.
okay? All right, thank you very much. And
Happy to help out.
I know. And we also need Selectman representative on the Human Resources Manager Search Committee. This town administrator is seeking 2 representatives from the Board of Selectmen to serve on the Human Resource Manager Search Committee. I would be happy to volunteer for that, as Mr. Connolly has relieved me of the responsibility of this other one, and it was our subcommittee, the Government Affairs Committee, that recommended it. So I would volunteer. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to serve.
So we have myself and Mr. Kerrigan, if someone wants to.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Selectman Chairman Chakonsky and Selectman Kerrigan to the Human Resource Manager Search Committee.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to appoint myself and Mr. Kerrigan to the Human Resource Manager Search Committee. Is there any discussion?
Just, Mr. Chair, just to
Yes.
note, as the makeup of the committee, I think what we were looking at would be 2 selectmen, 2 school committee, because this position's gonna
Right.
be town-wide, so we're gonna include the schools as well. The chair or their designee of the personnel board, because this will be, as I'm doing the duties now of the kind of the administrative support to the personnel board, that this person will be taking over that role, so they'll be at their meetings and setting their agendas and following up on their initiatives. And then also we asked perhaps the town treasurer, because currently the treasurer is doing all benefits and payroll right now, and hopefully some of those duties will be offloaded to this person. So we'd like to have the input from the treasurer on this committee, and who he may feel would be a good representative. And then the superintendent of schools and myself will be involved as well to make the final appointment. So that's kind of what we're looking to round out the committee. So if there are any other ideas that you think we should have, who we should have on, I'd be open to that.
Mr. Chairman, I just want a clarification of something. This is an advisory committee to the town administrator in the performance of duties he's authorized to execute, and
Right.
not a
Subcommittee of
regular
the board.
subcommittee of the board.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Okay, so it's myself and Mr. Kerrigan. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion's carried. Town Administrator Ethics Discussion. The town administrator needs to file a statement with the Board of Selectmen to disclose a conflict of interest due to a member of the Board of Selectmen becoming an applicant for the Sealer of Weights and Measures position in Clinton. The Board of Selectmen need to make a determination whether the town administrator can be impartial during this appointment due to the relationship with the candidate.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, I am a candidate for the Sealer of Weight and Measures. I have reached out to the Ethics Commission. They recommend that I leave the room if there was any discussion of the Sealer and Weight and Measures position. So there will be discussion, and I will be stepping out of the room until this discussion is over.
Okay, Michael, and I assume Robert?
Yeah, so just as the chair read, the deadline was a week ago Friday, March 8th, for the positions to fill this. It's a part-time stipend position. And we received 6 applicants, and one of those applicants then created a conflict for myself as in the position of appointing that position. So I'm required to disclose this conflict to my appointing authority. And then as the Board of Selectmen appointing authority, the board needs to make a determination as to whether that I will still be involved in the process. And if so, there's a form that we filled out that I state my conflict. The board signed by the chair would state that this has been reviewed, and whether or not if the board has allowed this to go forward, then the chair would sign it. If not, then there wouldn't be a need to file that form. So right now, disclosing that to the board, and then the board needs to make a determination as to whether we need to go forward with that disclosure form to be filed with the town clerk.
Okay, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there are 2 options here. Maybe there's more than 2.
Just by way of...
All right, okay.
I think I know what you're getting to, Mr. Chairman. Just by way of background, now obviously Mr. Sargent has recused himself from the discussion, but under 268A, Chapter 21A of this is really the act, conflicts section of the statute. But no member of a municipal commission or board shall be eligible for appointment or election by the members of such commission or board to any office or position under the supervision of such commission or board. So here, the issue becomes really, so obviously if a member of this Board of Selectmen is seeking the position of weights and measures, it's whether or not that position, under this statute, you have to make a determination, does it fall under the Board of Selectmen? If it does, then that individual would be barred from applying unless they were to resign, and they'd have to be resigned for 30 days. But here, don't forget, we have that special legislation that doesn't give the authority to the town administrator. It allows the Board of Selectmen to delegate that authority to the town administrator to make certain hires. So that's the difference you have here. If we didn't have that special legislation, then we would be under the statute. This board could not appoint another member of its board in a position that's going to report to the board. But here you have the intervening special legislation that gave the board the authority to delegate certain hires to the town administrator. So that's that's kind of the issue we're in right here. Michael made a call to the Ethics Commission. I'm of the opinion that I think the board has a problem here because I think the special legislation that we're talking about, the intent was that the Board of Selectmen would still have control over the position. In other words, not just this position, but any position. Even though Michael may do the hiring, this board has the ultimate authority. This board has the ultimate approval of those budgets. And in fact, this position is a department head, even though it's just an individual. None of that special legislation recall that for department heads that are appointed by the town administrator, this Board of Selectmen has 15 days to overturn that. So it really becomes an interpretation under this statute where is it really the Board of Selectmen through the town administrator who are making this appointment? I'm of the opinion that it is.
All right, so let me ask you what our options here are. Are you saying that, in your opinion, the only option is that if David wishes to apply for this job, he needs to resign?
Correct.
That's your opinion?
That's my opinion, based upon the
Based
statute
upon the law?
and the special legislation.
Okay, all right. Okay. Does
But
anybody have?
the Ethics Commission, well, I have not spoken with the Ethics Commission, I just learned about the Ethics Commission's opinion. The Ethics Commission on this differs from my opinion. The Ethics Commission came up with a second option.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just in a similar circumstance, I made an inquiry relative to myself with the Ethics Commission, and what I came away with was that a member of the board could apply for a position but could not be appointed to it unless or until they had resigned from the position and had been out of office for 30 days.
That's correct.
That was what their advice to me was, that I could apply for a job, but I couldn't be appointed to it unless I had been out of office for 30 days.
And you're correct, the statute actually provides that, so that is accurate. You don't become eligible. You could still apply for it, but you wouldn't become eligible for that appointment until you've been out of office for 30 days. But and I'm not sure if at that point you disclose about the special legislation, because the intervening problem here is this.
I did, right.
Yeah, because if we didn't have the special legislation involving the town administrator, that's absolutely correct. In other words, you'd be under the statute, and that would be it. You couldn't make the appointment. The person would have to be out for 30 days. But here, with this legislation, it becomes, okay, is it really not the Board of Selectmen who are making this appointment? Is it clearly the town administrator making the appointment of this position? Therefore, he just has to do the financial disclosure that he talked about and get the board's approval that he can make this appointment, and not be influenced in any way due to the circumstances.
And isn't the town administrator's issue, it's not an actual conflict of interest, it's the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Right.
Which is a different level. A reasonable person could believe that the town administrator is unduly influenced in the
Well,
appointment.
I think the Ethics Commission's opinion is, it even goes
It is-
further,
it
because,
is.
because you're talking about someone who's
Voting on himself.
who approved Michael's contract.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's, it's not even someone who's, Michael technically works for the Board of Selectmen, and now he's gonna be appointed to a position that's gonna now report to him.
Yeah, so it's just an appearance of,
So it really comes down to, my opinion is under the legislation, the special legislation, whether or not that really, the intent and how that is worded, does it really take the authority to appoint and the supervision completely away from the Board of Selectmen and give it to the town administrator? I'm of the opinion it doesn't, because you can give it, you can take that away anytime you want and give it. And with a department head, Michael can make an appointment to a position of a department head, and this board under the special legislation can reverse it.
Mhm.
So, but the Ethics Commission gave I think that interpretation there, the Ethics Commission also had a second option to say, no, he can make the appointment, he has that authority, but he just has to do the disclosure that the town administrator just alluded to. So,
Well, I just wonder what we do when we have conflicting pieces of advice. My thought, I mean, personally, if it was me, I would resign. I'm not comfortable with a sitting member of the board applying for a position and then forcing people to make those decisions. And I have nothing against David here, and I like him. He's been on the board for a long time. I would feel this way for myself and for any members of the board here. So that's my opinion, but I'm willing to listen to any discussion
I mean, if I may.
or any alternative ideas.
If I may, I agree with the chair. I think it just puts, I can only speak for myself, it just puts us in puts the board, I guess I'll speak for the board, I think it puts the board in an awkward position. And then it puts also Michael, if we go the other option, puts Michael in a position because this board approved his contract.
and when I reviewed it, I was just reviewing, the statute, 268A, 21A, that says, the board can't appoint one of its own members to a position that's gonna report to the board. And I took a look, obviously, at the special legislation. I didn't have a discussion with the Ethics Commission, I just looked at that statute, so my interpretation of that, and I put it in a couple of emails, that's how I interpret it. But the Ethics Commission, they have more clout, and they see this more than I do. Their position is that, based upon, the explanation of the special legislation, that Michael could make the appointment, he just had to do the disclosure. So, not the first time that I've disagreed with state agencies.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the sensitivity to the issue here, but Mr. Sargent or any other member, it's my belief that has the right to apply for a position like this. And I don't think we should be, and I'm sensitive to it because I considered applying for a town clerk at one point. And I thought, at the time, I thought it might be a good thing, not just for me, but for the town. So I don't think we should be, I think we should be flexible in our interpretation of what's allowed. It's my understanding that the applicant can't take the job unless he's been absent from this board for 30 days. Whether it's us, this board, choosing to make the appointment or allowing the town administrator to make the appointment.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. It's just that town council has a somewhat different opinion. And my own personal feeling is that you are free to apply for a position, but once you apply, you have to step off the board.
But you have to be off for 30 days.
Now, I'm not saying that that's my interpretation of the law. I leave that to the people who have talked to the Ethics Commission or town council. I'm just saying that I think that's what it should be. So,
Like I said, I have not spoken with the Ethics Commission, because I just learned of, what their opinion was. I have no problem calling the Ethics Commission and discussing it with them. I'm not sitting here and saying that, that I looked at this came up a month or so ago, and I looked at it and reviewed it. Again, I just reviewed it under that statute, under legislation, so, you know, the Ethics Commission may have run across this numerous similar situations in the past, and they have their rationale for saying that the town administrator can make the appointment. I have no problem following up on that. But I can't sit here and
That's
tell
what
you.
I think we should do.
I'd like to make a request, maybe as a motion, that town council review the issue with any sources he believes is
Credible?
supportive of him coming to a sound opinion and him giving us his opinion.
The
Okay,
motion?
that's a motion.
That's a
Is there a
motion.
second?
I'll second it just for
Motion's
under
made and
discussion.
seconded to ask town council to check with the Ethics Commission or other relevant institutions to be able to come up with a recommendation to the board. There any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to get on the record since everyone else has spoke, the last thing I want to do is to hinder anyone's livelihood on this board or in town, but I kind of think that the board is bigger than any one member or any of us, and yeah, I think we should at least do our due diligence here to see what gives us the most protection going forward. So I'd support the motion.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any other discussion? There being none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, motion's carried. Okay. Goals and objectives discussion.
I guess
Do we
David
want
can
to,
come in.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
we have to
might
call David
Get
back.
yeah.
Should we tell David,
Thanks, Joyce.
yeah, we can. David, there was some, well, I don't want to say confusion, there was some questioning of what the proper tack for the board to take should be, and so we have decided to provide some opportunity for town council to do further research. Goals and objectives discussion. Any goals and objectives discussion? I have the downtown decorative streetlight project, which has really turned into a sort of a revamping and upgrading of the downtown. The discussions have been far-ranging. Basically, we're looking at putting in decorative street lighting, and, you know, if you put in decorative street lighting, you've got to dig up the sidewalks to put the conduit underneath. So we're looking at new sidewalks, new roadway, and doing something about what trees are there. Now, I mean, there's been a huge discussion about the trees. Our engineers are very green and are very high on trees. They suggested, in one suggestion, they had 40 more trees going onto High Street than are presently there. My personal opinion is that there should be no trees on High Street. So, I mean, that's just some of the sort of discussions we're having. It's a very large and comprehensive program, and I think that, you know, before we go to town meeting, we will certainly be in here to brief the board, and there will be somebody to talk in favor of it at town meeting. And probably we will end up with a number of trees less than 40 and more than 0. Or less than 40 more, I should say.
Somewhere in the middle.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just express an opinion
Sure.
to your subcommittee, that I value, or I place a high value on trees and a friendly, welcoming environment on our business district. And it would be, in my opinion, a shame to invest the kind of money we're going to in lighting and sidewalks, et cetera, without having a comprehensive tree planting program involved. That's just my
Especially-
opinion.
Yeah, no, and it's a perfectly good opinion, and I know I'm not gonna get no trees. I just know that every merchant down there wants trees in front of somebody else's store.
If they want customers, we gotta
You
do
know?
our job of
I mean, as a matter of fact, one of the persons who was in favor of trees, when he saw the layout, said, oh, well, you can't put a tree there, that will block my side. So that's just where so I mean, I'm just telling you what, you know, I've lost many fights, and I lose them, I hope gracefully, and I'm prepared to lose this one. But that's what's going on with the town lighting. Anything else on goals and objectives? Okay, committee reports.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
the Marketing and Communications Subcommittee will be meeting on Tuesday, March 26th at 7 p.m.
okay. And we have the new town website up and running? Is that,
It's not activated.
It's not
I did
activated?
speak on Friday with the company, and they're preparing to do the switchover.
okay. I just was wondering because Ms. Goodsell talked about
Yeah.
the new webpage.
Yeah, the departments have worked on
They've
their
worked on it.
individual
Yeah, they're
page
working
and
on
put
it.
stuff up that they
Okay,
wanted.
so we're making progress on
Yep,
that.
so that, I think the site is ready to go, so they're switching over. We have to do all of the DNS pointers and switch all the new routers to the new company, so it'll probably be within days that it'll be
Good.
done.
Okay, good.
Excellent. Nice.
Any other committee reports?
It's not a committee report, Mr. Chairman. If it's okay with you, I'd like to go back just a little bit to the budget discussions. And I just want to have an understanding from the town administrator. Simultaneous with these budgets being presented to us, is there a plan going forward by the facility director to call out some of this, the facility portions of these budgets
Yes.
and create a town-wide facility department? So
Yes.
when it goes to the finance committee, that's going to be taken care of.
Yes, the direction that I've given to the facility director is to do a comprehensive departmental budget and plan for that department. Now, after that gets presented, and he's been meeting with all the other departments as to what their costs are and their personnel, so they're aware and they've discussed numbers between them as to what may come out. So the departments were submitting their budgets as they normally do. He met with them to determine what costs should be changed. He's then gonna put together a budget to create that department. Then as it goes through the selectmen and finance for the process, we'll need to determine at that point, do we wanna keep it as a comprehensive department? Do you wanna split out the town side as a lump and the school side? Do you want to keep it all one department, but keep heat, light, and power accounts within the individual departments so they manage their own power usage, you know? And, you know, sometimes if it's in a group setting, you know, there's the conservation may not, you know, be the motivation for conservation. So, so the hope was to have one big department, but there's many different models that we can go once we have the numbers. So once we have the information, let's then sit down and figure out how you wanna address it. So, I have a meeting on Friday with the facility director to finalize that document, and then where we go from there, he could be in at the next selectman meeting, to go over it and unveil it before, you know, then it would need to go through the finance and the whole process, but we probably would like to have some input once that is set, how big or broken up or how unified you want that to be.
But we will be prepared to execute this for town meeting, for this FY -- budget.
That's the hope, yep, to
Thank
go with all of the funding piece, you know, the budget-wise, you know. So at least budget will be in place.
Right.
And if departments, because the other piece is the labor piece. So
Right, I
tomorrow
understand that.
at 2:00, we have a meeting with our labor council and a union's representative. We're in the process of kind of putting together how the labor piece works. Because most of the employees that will be in this department are unionized. There's a small handful that are not. So our assumption, although that's up to the employees, is that it will become all unionized. So the representative of the school and DPW are the same union. So their representative has, after we met the last time, they were gonna meet with the employees and, you know, develop their strategy. But then our strategy is to put them all together some way and in some plan where they all wanna be under the personnel bylaw or where they all wanna be in a union.
Right.
So that next meeting is tomorrow afternoon, to hear back feedback from them as to how they're gonna do it. And then we're gonna look at developing, if it is a union, which we assume, developing that agreement. So that's the only piece that I have a little concern about, that will be ready by July 1, hopefully. But the budget piece should be set, and if there's a little bit of overlap, then we'll have to hit off those accounts for the employees that are still in the other departments. But we still have a lot of time, so we hopefully, confident we should be able to get it done. So
Thank you.
tomorrow will be a good, some good feedback tomorrow as to see where the employees are at tomorrow. So I'll keep the board update on that.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
no other committee reports? Hallelujah. We'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Meeting is adjourned.
Just for the record, this is the latest meeting I've attended in a long time.
Well,